you're live.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our workshop for the Emergency Management 101. So I guess we're going to try to learn, you're going to try to learn these old men up here something today. But who's going to be running the workshop?
Mr. Blanchard.
Mr. Blanchard? Mr. Blanchard, we'll go ahead and let you go ahead and start with the workshop. If you don't mind, we're going to say a prayer. If I can get Mr. Hartley to say a prayer to open up our workshop.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for our blessings. Lord, just go with us as we learn and discuss, Lord Heavenly Father, the best for the county, Lord Heavenly Father, and give us wisdom to make the right decisions. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Commissioners and Chair, for having us today. I've got a slide presentation. We're going to talk, I know we're talking about whether this was a training. This is obviously it's a workshop, but we're looking at sort of 10,000-foot view and educational process of what we do in emergency management and some of the roles that it plays in the county with our partners, and how basically through the last storm season, bringing together some of the things we've learned over the last couple of years and what we've been able to do to help the county, and how we want to move processes going forward so we can recover more when we have some of these incidents and make our county more resilient. So it's going to be, again, as I call it, the 10,000-foot view. So if you are not aware, some of you have met Dennis Schmitz. He's the Deputy Director. And then Scott Medlock, there you go. We've got some representatives here from the Florida Department of Emergency Management. We've got Josh Sanders. We work very closely with him in our particular region. And then also from FDM, got Keith Pruitt and Grant Goodwin, I'm sorry. Forgive me very much. And they're here to help talk about the whole process, because again, we're going to talk about quite a few different things this afternoon. And I'm going to kind of breeze through some of this stuff. Basically, on an emergency operations center is where we coordinate everything in the activity that takes place when it basically gets bigger than the scene. Like if we had a traffic crash, in most cases you would deal with that traffic crash at the scene. But if it became a cascading event where like we had an explosion or a fire that goes along with it and gets bigger and they need more resources, that's when the emergency operations center would come into play. It doesn't have to be just hurricanes. It could be a train derailment. Okay, hoping it's not happening. Okay, fires, that's probably one of my biggest concerns in Baker County. When I was with Lake City, we had the Bugaboo Fire. Some of you guys remember the Bugaboo Fire? We don't want that to come back again either. But anything that gets bigger than what's happening at the scene, you put together the Emergency Operations Center. And the way we operate is more like a division or sectional, where each group would come in, like the school board, Department of Health and whatnot, and they would play the role that they need to for that incident. Sometimes we don't necessarily need a person sitting in the seat, but we need to be able to contact them to make sure that if a decision needs to be made, we're able to get a quick response to that. We don't need somebody in the Emergency Operations Center that can't make decisions, or that it's going to take an extended period of time to do that, because again, we're going to be the group that whatever the incident, they call and say, I need X. We're supposed to find X for them, whether we do it locally or whether we go through the state. When it comes to either a state declared disaster, or it comes into something that's a federal disaster, the state will also open up their emergency operations center generally. Okay, and we will coordinate with them. And I can tell you, for the last couple of storms we dealt with, the Florida Department of Emergency Management has been a great asset for us to get supplies and resources here. As you notice, FEMA is also able to come in because it was a federally declared disaster. We had the Disaster Recovery Center and a couple other groups come in and help with our community people for the 3 storms. In the 2 specific storms, we brought in $3.4 million so far to the community, back to this community. That's a huge thing we've never done before, not to that extent, obviously. So that's why we put together the OC, so we can make that coordination. we follow what's called the ICS, the Incident Command System. And that's part of the reason we have you all here and some of the partners in the audience and some of the people we invited. As we move forward, not just with today's workshop, but we're going to have some individual trainings, or as I call them, educations, because nobody likes to go to quote trainings, okay? But how the Incident Command System works and how it expands out for all the people who are involved. So you understand that there's multiple pieces to this. It's not just law enforcement sometimes, it's not just fire, it's not just our road department, but it can be a lot of other people like the school system that participate in that. So there's some different trainings that are through the FEMA, basically educational system that we can get. We also can do some locally to talk about those particular components. And probably the biggest thing that I wanted to bring forward, when I took over emergency management, and we had conversations with the sheriff and undersheriff and some of the county staff as well, we were talking about some of the responsibilities of an emergency management group and what the county's responsibility and some of our partners are. And one of the concerns I had was, as I saw historically, what we were doing was generally set up shelters. So if there was a storm coming, we would set up a shelter. And I asked, what did we do after for recovery? What did we do for mitigation? And there was not really much done. And in a good learning scenario through this past year, we had 3 storms come through here. 2 of them dramatically affected us. Not terrifically bad, but enough to where you see that just with the civilians, as far as what's called individual assistance, we're looking at $3.4 million that brought in here, as well as some of the other road projects we talked about, which is the bridge, the fishing pier, and that type of stuff. But with that, there's some specific things that we have to look at, which is listed right there on the slide. And I'm going to take each one a little at a time. So what really covers emergency management is the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. That is what talks about you're supposed to do when it comes to disasters. It's been around for quite a while, obviously. There's been a few additions that have come along with it. CFR Part 201 with some newer things that have been done. And there's a lot of purchasing guidelines that go along with that as far as how you can purchase and the documentation you have to have on the back end. Homeland Security Presidential Directive 5, what a big name for that. And that basically says that you're supposed to cover the prevention, preparation, support, response, and recovery from any terrorist attacks, major disasters, and other emergencies. And there's a whole list of things that are attached to that one. The National Incident Management System, that is where they are trying to get everybody standardized, okay? And that's where you're following, that's why, so one division of the federal government, state government, local government can talk and have common ground. So everybody calls the same thing a widget. We do processes similarly. So when you go into a different area, if I went to Colorado and had to work something, we would be working on the NIM system together. So it wouldn't be a foreign thing to walk in there. All right, and the big one for Florida is 25238, and that is how the counties and local government are supposed to respond in a declaration. And there's a slew of things that go along with that, but there's a lot of responsibilities that are associated with that. I'm not going to take a deep dive into 252, but through the subsequent education we'll be doing, we will be talking about more specifically with 252 and what the responsibilities are. And probably the most recent one you've seen some information on is the CEMP, which is the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at that, remember talking about it. And in a little bit, we're going to actually hand out what's called ESF functions for some of the different departments and what the roles and responsibilities of each of those partners are in that comprehensive emergency plan. What's important with that is we collectively put this plan together and say that each group, like the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, the school system, have certain roles and responsibilities when an event takes place. Okay? When I took over and started taking a deep dive, I looked into our comprehensive emergency management plan, and I know that Ms. Sarah Little knows very well about this. There were a lot of flaws. It turned out that the contractor that was doing these comprehensive emergency management plans for multiple counties, not just ours, were doing cookie cutter things. And it really started specifically as we went through each ESF function and specifically with the
Salvation Army.
Salvation Army. what was interesting is when we talked to the Salvation Army and said, here, this is what our plan says you all do. Can you review it and tell us if this is still current? They looked at it and said, we haven't done that in 8 years. So we had a huge problem. So we are taking that CEMP piece by piece, and we are reviewing all those. And we're in a current state of doing that now with all of our partners. We're pushing out each one of these ESF functions and saying, how do you do your job? Does this still apply? And we know it needs to be tweaked. We have several years to update this, put it back together, and we'll send it to the state. We're not the only county that had this issue. That question, sir?
We're not using that consultant any further, are we?
I'm sorry, sir?
Are we using that consultant any further?
No, sir, and I'm glad you asked that because repeatedly I use that person's name to say absolutely not, no way if I was fired. And I'm being nice at the moment. But no, we are not, and because of that, I've pushed it out to a lot of people that are not using that consultant or their firm anymore. But it was somebody that we had been utilizing, and I know Ms. Sarah knows who that is. So we are rebuilding this program, and that's one of the reasons we want you all here. I don't know what your experience is with emergency management. It's an important role for our community, okay? And you are our policy group. So we want to, just like we come and talk to you about our projects, we want to make sure that you have input because you steer what you're asking us to do. And you've seen the projects that we're talking about as possible things that we can move forward with. But again, as an emergency comes into play, we need some of your input sometimes to assist with that and seeing the oversight of what we're doing. Does that make sense? So putting together this plan is going to take a while, and it's going to take some heavy lifting from each group to look at it. And when it comes to the plan, we don't necessarily, as long as it's legal and ethical, tell the groups how to do their job. We just need to know how they do their job and what they will supply when that happens, and then we put it together in a plan. Some of the things were written by this particular group was not something they did. And unfortunately, it made its way to the state. And again, we weren't the only county that had that issue. So we had to point it out to several counties. They're going back doing some of the same things we are right now.
When you develop the CMP, who reviews and approves it at the end of the day?
We all do.
Does it go beyond the board?
Yes.
Where does it go to? Who all reviews it? Who all gives final approval and blessings or raises questions and things on it?
So once it's approved by the board, it goes off to the state, and the state reviews it to make sure that it doesn't appear that there's any gaps, okay? But they don't review it necessarily for the process, and that's how it made it all the way to the state.
Okay.
We need to review it to make sure that it's taking care of what is designated in that ESF function. That's our responsibility.
Okay.
And that's what we were doing and found out that those gaps were there. All right, so you see that little list that even with my glasses on are pretty hard to see. These are some examples of emergencies that may affect the area. Everything from a pandemic, wildfire, planned events, mass casualty event, explosions. These are all the different things that you could see which would turn into the EOC being activated. And it can develop, and it could be a cascading event. Like I said, a traffic crash could turn into a escalating event, which could turn into a brush fire and all types of things, or more mass casualty because of multiple traffic crashes. So it can be turned on for a lot of different reasons. All right, what I love about emergency management, people go, what do you guys do other than set up shelters? There's a lot of things to do in blue skies when you don't have the storms, you don't have the EOC necessarily activated, okay? And that's when we talk about recovery and mitigation, okay? And the planning part and preparing for the next storm, because we know in Florida, guess what? We're gonna have another storm or something that we're gonna have to be related, activated to. And then some of the lesser stuff, like we've got side-by-sides or Polaris Rangers that we use those for things that are other than emergencies, for patrolling certain aspects, looking for missing people, that type of stuff. Gray skies is obviously when we start seeing that storms are coming or we're preparing for something. Could be wildfire season, we could be starting to step up, thinking that we need to do some deforestation, that type of stuff. Those are all processes that you jump back and forth between the blue and the gray skies.
John?
Yes, sir.
One question before you
Yes,
get
sir.
any further. On that list you had a while ago, I didn't see anything about school shootings or, would the EOC be brought in on that?
So when you look at the bottom one, it says mass casualty event.
So that's where
That would
you
cover that. This certainly
anything,
does,
Walmart, any places, all mass casualty. Okay.
and this list is not everything you can think of. I-
Parade.
Right, I'm just,
There's all types of reasons. Anytime you have something that goes beyond the local event, which like I said, where the people at the scene are taking care of it, and they're saying, hey, we might need resources, we might need Jacksonville to respond, Columbia County, Gainesville, okay? And it can be whether it's a health-related issue, okay, or physical people need to come do things, and you say it's gonna dedicate some time to it, we're gonna stand up to you.
John, I don't know what funding and what kind of compensation's involved, but if a power plant here or solar farm here has a lithium battery the size of a boxcar container, and it catches fire, it's gonna burn for 10 days. That's gonna be an enormous cost to this county or any county that experiences that. Does EOC cover anything like that?
No, so when you say EOC doesn't, but we would work to see if we can find some funding. And in some cases, we are, which is what we're doing with some of these projects now. We don't have the funding to do some of this building, all right, but because of the declaration, there are pools of money that we're able to apply for.
Okay.
So it depends on the event. We have to evaluate each event on what its scope is.
touch it.
And see what we can do from there. All right, so an EOC activation is generally, and this is basically just starting off, this is a declared state of emergency, whether we do it locally and or state or federal. It doesn't have to be just the one, okay? And in general terms, it's a countywide threat to life or public safety or impairment of critical infrastructure. And again, as you saw that list of stuff in there, it can be a lot of different scenarios to set that up. And that's basically, like I said, something out of the localized area. It's an incident that is expected to exceed the available resources, or there's potential for an incident to expand the scope requiring significant additional resources. Something outside of handling it at the scene, okay? And generally, the incident is expected to continue over several operational periods. So usually multiple hours. And when they say operational periods, usually longer than 12 hours. It could be less than that, though, truthfully, depending on what we decide to do as far as opening it up to get the resources to the people that need it.
and who makes that call?
Well, it's a combination. Generally, if I see something coming, whether it's a storm or we have a situation, I'm making a phone call to Sarah. And as you know, we've come before and done the local state of emergency, okay? If that looks like something we can do. But in the meantime, we're still standing up the Emergency Operations Center and handling what we need to until we make that decision. And it may be where we don't need a local state of emergency, okay? But as soon as, whether it's the fire department or any of our partners call me and say, hey, we need some assistance. We had a call from the hospital before when they had an oxygen issue. And we were able to help them with some oxygen issues. So again, it's just by whoever in the community, basically our partners are, that says we are looking outside of ourselves to try and make something happen, we try and assist in that. Even if it's not coming up to a full activation at our Emergency Operations Center.
How do you measure your number of responses? How do you measure what you do with EOC?
Well, again, depends on the individual. And we can just have somebody pick up the phone. We just had somebody call us the other day and they were looking for mattresses. We help with the mattresses.
Now, I mean, how many
Oh.
events you have a year, or how do you measure your activity?
Okay, so as far as activations, we don't necessarily put those on a calendar. Now, as far as the overall operations, we do track them, and it's every year's different. It's like for basically 6 months, we've been working on 3 storms.
So can you compare this year to last year to the
This
year
year has
before?
been extremely busy,
I
okay,
understand.
but very informative, and we've been learning a lot during this particular year.
I was just wondering how you track that from one year to the next, or 1 month to the next.
So, and again, as far as every time we have an activation, we document those, okay? But I can't say that we've really tallied them until now, okay, because we had 3 back-to-back storms. And what we were able to do, and again, I use this jokingly sometimes, saying we generally just set up shelters, okay? This year has really stretched what we were doing, but it was a good exercise for us in learning, bringing our partners together, doing some education, and now we're able to do some recovery work and some mitigation work. So it's been valuable, and I was trying to do this, put this meeting together before the storm, and it was literally 2 months before the storm, and I was trying to make the plan. Reach out to the state, look, we're gonna do this, and then got hit with 3 storms. So it's dragged it out, but at the same time, we had some new commissioners come in, so it's actually a very good time to start this. Like I said, we're gonna move forward with some additional information on some silos on what's expected and how we can move forward with some county resources. In our activations here, basically when we decide we need all hands on deck or we're preparing to do it, we send out an informational to all of our EOC partners, okay? And sometimes there'll be individual discussions. Do we need your rear end in a seat so we can physically have some help with some things? Or do we just need you on standby so if we need to pick up the phone and get some resources? And we'll usually have a overview of what the event is and what's taking place. Even if you're not required to be there, we still want you to be aware that these things are happening because, as I said before, the situation can be fluid and it may change. We may think that we don't need the fire department in something, and guess what? In 20 minutes, we need the fire department. So we want you to know something's already moving and taking place. Same thing, we may not need a heavy law enforcement presence, but our staff still need to know what's taking place in case that change happens, okay? Generally, when we stand up the operational center, we do 12-hour shifts. That's usually the best way to help everybody. And it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. the following morning. And during that, there will be different meeting briefs, incident action plans, and that stuff will go out to the people that are participating so you can plan for what the different possibilities might be. Same thing with logistics, things that might be coming in. If we're making requests from the state, we have a program called Web EOC that the state basically doesn't supply missions from, and we can ask for resources. Some of you may realize that we've had a consulting group that has helped us with some documentation, recovery, and that stuff. That is how we got them, is through requesting from the state for their assistance, and they're still here today helping us with some of that recovery, with the documentation and sending it in, trying to get the recovery for that. And these are your basic activation levels. That's where you'll see level 3, which is monitoring, which happens a lot, where we, especially when storm season comes, you start watching it and you go, uh-oh, is this coming our way? Okay, and everybody watches the curve and the cone to see if we're in there. And there's a lot of discussion. I know that poor Sarah, several times we're on the phone going, should we or shouldn't we activate? We're right there on the cusp, and where we are, unfortunately, in the state this past year, it seemed like every storm could be. Level 2 is a little more, stepped up, where we think we really are doing more than just planning. We're starting to put some people in place, but we're not asking everybody to be there 24 hours at that particular point. And then, of course, you see number 1 right there, which is the full activation. And with that full activation, generally there's several core people that we will have there, especially if it's something that might affect power. We generally have Florida Power and Light in the EOC the entire time. We generally have somebody from the Guard that will be there as well as a liaison in case we need a force multiplier. This past storm season, we actually had them come in with 2 skid steers and some people to do what we call cut and toss to help open up roadways. And they went through 200 miles of roads in one day to help clear. That was a resource that was invaluable to us. Now, we had our own staff, law enforcement, we had the fire department, and we had the road department out there doing it too. But again, that was another resource we generally didn't have. And we were able to move very quickly to help open the roads back up. All right, know your role, okay? And this is why we're wanting to start doing this educational process on, now this is sort of abbreviated just for the EOC, but logistical support, deliveries, transportation, shelter support, and resource management. There's actually a lot that goes in the states, starting up the shelter, because we have to have somebody to do the check-in, we have to review to make sure the criminal histories. On top of it, we have to put cots in there. We have snacks, food, water, those types of things that are involved, plus putting the notifications out. The EOC support, we call it the Citizens Information Center. We staff people on the phone. So they make phone calls and talk to us about their trees down, or they have certain other needs they might need. And then operational support, which is, I don't know if some of you saw that we actually put out what's called a POD, appointed distribution. A couple of the churches we were able to utilize. We gave out food, water, MREs, and some hot meals. We did that multiple locations, including down there at Crystal River. What we're trying to do in this particular situation with the pods is set up 5 different locations around the county. As I've seen through other storms that I've been involved with, one of the thought process, well, we'll just have them come to the fairgrounds and pick everything up there. Well, the problem with that is if you have infrastructure issues, especially where people are hurting and damaged, that means they have to drive all the way here, so it's going to be a congested area. And if anyone's been out there at some of the food distributions, that gets busy, let alone having 1,000 people come in trying to get stuff. So we're looking to basically, I call it the spoke in the hub, where we'll have a central location in McClenny, and then we're looking to have basically the points of the compass for around the county. We've already started contacting and building those up, so we can put those points of distribution out there, which are closer to the neighborhoods, so they won't have to come all the way to town. So that's part of the things that we're building right now with our EOC. All right, training. I know everybody loves this right here. If you're not familiar with the ICS training that takes place on the FEMA website, there's a lot of independent study, and if you look at what I have listed there, the IS stands for independent study. The 2 on the bottom, the G stands for that's a class that people would have to go to. You see the one is 3 days and the other is 2 days. Almost all of our supervisors have these trainings now, but we are asking for a lot of our other staff that will be participating in the Emergency Operations Center to take this training, because it helps you understand the process and what will be expected and what can happen in some of these incidents. So when you show up at a pod, when you show up in the Emergency Operations Center, it's not a foreign concept. You are not really sure why somebody's doing something. And if you just get on-the-job training and you show up and you go, okay, I did this little piece of it, you will miss some of the other broader parts that go along with it. You need to have a sort of better realization on what some of these things are. Most of these independent studies don't take very long to do online. Again, it's just some suggestions for people that may want to look at it. And then for us specifically, we will be, people that are participating, we're going to be asking that they take those. All right. Again, EOC, what do? We're supposed to plan ahead, okay? And that includes the people that are coming to the EOC. We all have lives, we have homes, all right? Generally what we do in the EOC, we say we know the storm's coming, it's 3 to 5 days away. Go get your house in order and be prepared to come back, because you may be here for 3 days. Hopefully not longer, but we try and say 3 days, plan on you may be here for 3 days working the incident. We don't know how bad it's gonna get yet. We have to build our own kit. We talk about emergency kits, hurricane kits, for families. Did you have questions, sir? Okay.
Multitasking.
But those are things you should be doing too, as somebody that would be coming to the EOC. Okay, planning to have that stuff available. And again, staying informed, because the information is going to be put out to how we're going to be preparing our county for these storms. This is the plan ahead, is prepare your resident, educate your family, what are you going to do? Something that I didn't have enough room on here, well, it's on the bottom, okay, I merged it together. Plan for pets. People have, whether they're agricultural pets or family pets, don't forget those. You can't forget those. Because I've seen plenty of times where people think, I've got everything taken care of, I got my wife and my kids taken care of, and they're like, uh-oh, I didn't take care of my cows. Okay, or my dog's still outside, we haven't done
My
anything.
wife would leave me before she left the fence.
Very true in most families, very true in most families. And pets are part of my
Smart
family.
lady.
Yeah, pets are part
Smart
of my
lady.
family.
I agree with you.
I've talked about that. So working in the EOC, when people show up, they need to understand they should have certain things. First of all, when they show up at the EOC, if they're working in there, check in, let the people know you were there to work. Okay, and we obviously talk to our staff that this is very important, because especially if you have a lot of people moving around, it'd be easy to come in and get lost in some of that movement sometimes. In our particular case, you can't just walk into the EOC unless we prop the door open. You have to have some type of badge. I've got a proxy, and I've got this nice little thing that gets me around the building. For our partners that are actually assigned positions at EOC, we will give out one of these so you can come and go, and it's tracked that way. It doesn't give you access to the entire building, but it will to the EOC. One of the things that people forget sometimes, again, for reading up close, I don't need my glasses. For far away, I do. And some people forget, especially if they're going to need reading glasses, bring your reading glasses with you. That's very important. I've seen plenty of people have to pass them around and they're trying to squint and things like that. Most people have these devices now. All right, bring your charging cord, because not everybody has a charging cord that works for your phone. Usually there's 2 standards right now. Actually, there's a third one, but make sure you bring your own charging cord. And then dietary issues. I was surprised. People that know me at 11 o'clock know that I hunt food at 11 o'clock. I have to feed my tapeworm.
You can set your clock to it.
And 10:30 it starts chiming in. Well, some people, and I understand this, they have dietary restrictions. If you have a dietary restriction, you need to prepare for that. And that happens more often than not, okay? And there's nothing wrong with bringing your own food if it's something that you have right there. Hygiene products, I can tell you that after a couple of days, you will notice if you need hygiene products. So it's important to bring it, and I'm sure at some point somebody may let you borrow it if it's something you didn't bring. Same thing with change of clothes. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but you might want to bring a change of clothes. And same thing with sleeping materials. So we've got a couple of bunk beds inside of our EOC. I know that our guards people generally use it. I bring my own air mattress and I sleep on the floor. And it's first come, first served, but we do have some cots, but it's limited space to be able to do it. And when we get done with an event, we're ready to go home. So it's not the Plaza, it's not a Hilton, but those are things. If you've got a special pillow that you can't live without, whether it's my pillow or something like that, please bring it with you, because I've seen people wad jackets up and be miserable for a couple of days. We do have showers and good bathrooms. So towels and things like that would be nice. We can generally find some towels at our EOC if you needed them, but some people have a specific towel they like or texture they like. So those are things we would ask everybody to bring with them. So this is what you would see as a typical activation starting when we're talking about planning. And I know Ms. Sarah sees them and our partners do. I'm not sure how many of you may have seen them in the past. This is something you would see from the National Weather Service. And we start putting these bulletins out going, okay, we need to watch it. Where's it going? Okay. And my rule of thumb is, and I can tell you most of your people that are under weather will tell you this too, 72 hours. That is really when you start seeing where the storm is going to go. Just like when 2 weeks before the snow event happened, there were multiple days where people going, oh, it's going to snow next Wednesday. That went on for weeks. I don't know if you knew it, but I knew it because I was getting phone calls. It's going to snow in Baker County. And I'm like, hey, we're more than 72 hours away. You need to wait. Now, guess what? Finally, it did snow in parts of Florida. Depending on where you were in the county, you may have seen, if you want to call it snow, you can, or ice. It's falling from the sky. It was definitely sleet. Columbia County, we got a little bit of a dusting. But we were watching the weather. We opened up a warming center because the temperature and was not only going to be cold enough, long enough, but it was also going to be wet. And our concern was there may be, especially some homeless people that were not smart enough to go to Walmart or some other place that they generally know to go to in those places. And just for the general knowing what happened, we had one person show up, and that person was from out of town. So we had nobody local show up for the shelter or the warming center. But we were actually able to set it up. The other days, it was not a wet event, it was cold, but it was not going to be cold enough, long enough to warm warming shelter. But these are the types of things that you see there we're going to push out to have conversations about and start having people do their preparation. As you see, the cone's getting closer in levels, and we're going to say, okay, there's a good % chance, greater than 30, that we're going to get it. Okay, whether direct hit or close enough that's going to impact us. And generally, that's what I'm looking at, 30%. If we can say 30% at that point, we're going to be talking about a local state of emergency. Okay? And what we're going to do from there. And of course, when we get there, 1 to 2 days out, we've probably already started asking for a local state of emergency and gone to a 24-hour activation at that point, or decided when we were going to pull the trigger on that 24-hour activation. And again, that's to give everybody enough time between those two levels to make sure they take care of their stuff so they can come back and perform in the EOC. The executive decision group, that is you all. All right, you're our policy group. And we work, obviously, for you. I'm employed, I wear two hats. I work for the sheriff's office, but I also work for you as an emergency management director based on what the sheriff has asked me to do. So that is why we are trying to include more information with you all, because we're here to represent what your needs are and wants are. And I work closely with Sarah to pass that information along. And then occasionally now we're coming to you all and sharing the information out in the open to make sure that we are following, especially now that we have recovery and mitigation projects. That would be the process for us to do that. And again, really what the part of the reason we're doing this is to try and make sure that everybody understands that they actually do have a role, which you can see right there is basically you're assisting us with policy, legal, and safety issues to make sure that we're doing it properly. Go ahead, yes, sir.
Question on that last slide. That decision group,
Yes.
is that stood up each time? Or is that an established group already?
So it's established because it's you all, okay? You being the Board of County Commissioners, okay? And really, when we have that discussion, local state of emergency, that is when we were bringing you guys in, you all into it. In the meantime, any other conversations, I'm going through the county manager.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking, it says other members may include city manager, sheriff, school superintendent, department of health. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is there a group of folks that, in the middle of an event, in the middle of an activation, we have an EOC stood up,
Yes, sir.
and it's impacting multiple different entities, right? It's going to
Good.
impact schools,
Yes, sir.
right? When we close the roads, close the schools, they're going to get closed. I can see where it involved Department of Health as well as the city could impact them as well. So who is helping, who's driving those decisions in the middle of the event? Or do we have a group there that's...
We do, yes, sir. So if you, and I know you may not have been to our operations center, look. So at our desk, there we have consoles and computers at each one, and then we've got names for the individual groups, such as Department of Health, the city fire, county fire. All those people can be represented there, depending on the event. Now, when we stand up the EOC, again, the list goes out to all of our partners, okay, because it may ebb and flow and change. So as they need to give input, or if I have a direct question, I will certainly reach out to that group.
Okay.
If they're not physically sitting there and say, hey, this is happening, to include them, because it is a group. This is just a generic of how an incident would be taking place. In other words, you'd be looking at the incident commander, which is usually where the action is taking place, whether it's a traffic crash, a fire, that type of thing. And as things would expand, this is basically a rough model. This is not exact. And the other thing that is very important is some of these roles can be all done by a person. You don't have to have an individual person for each one of these. Okay? These are just basically roles they would play. And the event, as it grows, you would generally bring in more people and then specialize those specific to that event. The incident commander, that would be the person who establishes the EOC and coordinates all the EOC support. Obviously, a public information officer would be just that, depending on the group that's affected, whether it be the fire department, someone from the county sheriff's office, who that PIO might be. And it's very common to have more than one PIO. They usually work in concert together. And the basic function of the EOC is operations planning, support logistics, and finance. It's very important to have those four roles working together, okay? Because especially with operation and planning saying we need X, going to logistics saying how are you going to get this to me? Guess what? Somebody's got to pay for it. It's not unlimited resources. I can't just run out there and bring everything in there without having some idea of how we're going to recover from it. Now, the good thing is we follow our purchasing guidelines out there, okay? And with that, there is some things in place on what we can do in an emergency, but we still have to have that oversight for finance. I don't have a checkbook, I don't have the credit card, All right, we bring in other people to help supplement that. And the other thing is, that's why we're starting to do some of this training, is when it comes to the recovery part of it, we can go spend money, and if it's a declared event, if we document it properly, there's a lot of things that are qualified that we can recover some or all of that money back. And that's the huge thing, and that's what you've heard us talk a little bit about here, is in some of this recovery, when it comes to especially some of the road projects, we are going to get back some money for this. Now, not 100%, but again, if you bring in thousands of dollars and you spend $10,000, it's still something that's better than zero. And before, we didn't do any of that. Okay, but we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars we're looking to get back. Okay, we'll get further into that later. The planning P, some of you may or may not have heard of the planning P. Some people call it like OODA loop is a version of it, and what I go back to my old school is what's important next, what's important now, the WIN acronym, okay? Or the 3 C's used to be contain, control, communicate. This is a deeper model of how the process works to make decisions, okay? And in most cases, we try and operate in this type of environment to figure out how we need to next move forward best for everybody that's included in it, okay? I can tell you some of these almost happen simultaneously, and then some of them are deeper meetings that can last a while as you try and figure out, like we are with some of our projects, which way do we want to go with it, such as the Turner Cemetery Bridge, those types of things. They'll be more detailed depending on the particular thing we're talking about. Nice pictures. Let's go up on the airboat. Operations section. Look at all those different functions in there if you can see it. Again, a lot of these can be done with a person or a couple of people. Each one of those segments does not necessarily have to be a person, but it's something, depending on the event, may need to be addressed. Like I said, you've got law enforcement on the law enforcement side with search and rescue, animal control, and military support. In some cases, that actually could be one individual. And again, just understanding these are all subsections in there that may need to be looked at depending on your event. And that's what the ICS and NIMS model does, is it can be something that you're dealing with a single incident. Again, I use the example as a traffic crash, or it can be something as to a larger event that's going into where multiple crashes and turned into a mass casualty where you need to expand it with all these different roles. Same thing with planning. You can see there that there are nice fancy names in there, which is a planning chief, a section chief, situational unit, documentation, and I can't stress enough how important the documentation part of it is. Some of you may have heard us talk about FROC. That's something we'll go into a little bit further, and that is basically where if we follow the FROC process, it generally means that more people are going to be looking at the documentation we have and the process we did, including the purchasing guidelines, to make sure when we present it to FEMA, there's less chance for de-obligation. And that is my nightmare word, that the reason we are putting in so much emphasis on the training and the documentation to make sure we follow the process properly and include the right people and documentation is so we don't send something in, and this can happen. FEMA will send us a check, and then 2 or 3 years later, you will have another audit that's take place, and somebody go, well, you guys really didn't follow the process properly, and you get what's called a de-obligation. I know that many counties have had that happen, okay? We are doing on the front side multiple reviews of our paperwork and our process to help ensure that that does not happen, and that's part of this FROC process that we're doing. If you notice, the logistics branch has similar things right in there as far as the pod operations, food unit, the communications, technology, facilities, supply. Again, a lot of these things can fall under the same person in an operation. And again, finance, this is really huge, okay? Not only the documentation on why you went out and did something, whether it's people or physical activities, but it's then how did you buy and purchase things along with the supporting documentation on how you purchased it. One of the things we've been going over with the different departments in the county are the forms, because there are certain forms that you have to have. And on that first row where it says Instant Command System, if you go down to the bottom, 214, If I could get a T-shirt for Dennis and have him wear it all the time, it would be 214, because one of his duties was to make sure everybody turned in their activity log. What did you do when? Everybody, every day on their shift, if they were doing something related to storms, had to turn in a 214. That is the ICS form, okay? And in some cases, we would convert that form over to an FROC form, which would be their log 001, the daily activity reports. But again, those things are extremely important, because what I do is I take that 214, or my daily activity log, I have to show in my payroll that I was working in emergency capacity, and there's several ways we do that. There's with the sheriff's office, there's actually a code we put in that says on this day we're doing this type of service, and we usually also sometimes make a note with it. We put that together with our notice of deposit, and it shows, it backs up everything. We did this type of work, this is where we've applied for payment, and this is where we were paid. And that's just for one person. So all these things are extremely important for us to turn in together.
Is all that electronic?
We are working on that. So
Working on converting it from paper to electronic now?
Well, no, currently we're doing both. So we're using a program called Crisis Track, and we're educating everybody on Crisis Track.
Is that what Chris?
That's
That's
what
what
Chris
you
was
are
talking
using,
about.
right? Okay.
So as EOC, we purchased that. I saw that as a great opportunity for us. About a year and a half ago, we finally got it implemented. This was a great training thing for us. And what we're trying to do is put everybody's equipment and people in the system, so you're not having to re-enter stuff over and over again. You go in and select a box,
Right.
a person, equipment, and that type of stuff. And it already has the rates inside it, because that's the next thing, is you have to find out what the FEMA rate is. So we're constantly adding that stuff in. And the Crisis Track will give us either form we want. It'll populate it. So it's a lot less work. Same thing with identifying damage. We go out and take pictures with it, put a pin there, and upload it in the system, which makes it much
Right.
easier to track.
So you're putting the rates and everything into the library, selecting it, doing it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those that are out in the field, they'll have like a tablet or an iPhone. and they
All
can
right,
use
so
it while they're out in the
post-impact,
field.
okay? The first thing we need to do is damage assessment. The thing has happened, whether it's a fire, whether it's a storm, and we have to go out and find out what the damages are, because as we can show the state or the federal government that we have damages, we can turn on certain funding and certain resources to come in and help us. Now, the problem we have in rural America is most people's homes are off the road. And when I say off the road, sometimes it can be more than 500 feet, and you can't see it from the road. You can't see the damages. And historically in Baker County, most people don't report their damages. They just take care of it. Call the insurance. They have not been trained that there may be some resources. This past year, we've done a really good job of knocking doors and explaining to people, which has brought us $3.4 million to some of these people. That's a huge thing, okay? It will never make anybody whole, but it helps. And even if you have insurance, there are cases where there may be some gaps that you can still get some funding for, and that's trying to educate the public. Crisis Track's another one. We can put this basically link for them to report their own damages, so then we can follow up with them and come out, verify some of it, but they can even take their own pictures and upload it in the system as well, which has been invaluable to us. So the more we push this out to the community, hopefully, again, we're not going to have many of them, but when it does happen, it's a force multiplier for us, because we don't have a lot of people. We have to ask for certain people to come help us, and we've been training, the road department, the fire department have been learning on Crisis Track how to help come out there and identify this stuff. But the initial damage assessment, that takes a lot of time for us to do that and report it. And I can tell you from the state level, they constantly are calling, going, hey, where's your damage assessment? We need it. So there's two different categories you're generally going to see when it comes to damages, and that's your public assistance and individual assistance. The public assistance, the state and the county has a threshold, okay, before they activate the public assistance and you can apply for it. Again, it's nothing that's going to happen immediately as well. And the individual assistance, it's not a threshold, it's based on the assessments of home, whether it's major, destroyed, in the several different categories. Let's see here.
Let me ask a question. Going
Yep.
back to the crisis thing,
Uh-huh.
how is that doing? I mean, pretty good. You've had it a year now?
The track has been a very good help to us.
You've had it a year now? I mean, you're seeing good
Yes,
results
sir.
from it?
So we bought it about a year and a half ago, and
Mhm.
it took a while to get implemented, just through the purchasing process.
Right.
We started training this year, actually. So to happen at the right time, this was the right time. So we brought in a lot of people and started teaching them and training and uploading the system
Mhm.
so we can get the information out there. And we're in the process with the fire department of loading the rest of their equipment now.
Okay.
So it has
When do you project it to be 100%?
well,
Well, it's going to be evolving because we're constantly
so as
getting
far
new
as having
things.
everything loaded, my guess is within the next couple of months, we should, because we're still doing a review process, to make sure we have everything accounted for that we
Yeah.
believe. And then the rest of it is we still did need to do more training. That's probably the biggest thing, is training more people to do it.
Okay.
Dennis, what do you think? We have 30 people maybe doing it right now?
So it's a combination thing. So because we had this in the process, and then Debbie and Colleen called us by the short hairs, we had to do, I think we did a total of 60 just-in-time trainings. We had the road department in there. We didn't have everyone in the road department. We did 35 officers, and then we did some additional. We had some folks from the property appraiser's office. We had Mr. Combs from this office. So we've done a segment of it, but we really didn't get the opportunity to get in there and do the nuts and bolts, the A to Z training. We did just-in-time training to get out there and respond specifically to Helene, because Debbie we didn't have it in place in Debbie, and we hurried up, put it together for Helene. And so we're probably about 10% of the way of having enough folks from all the departments that are competent and confident in their use of it. And then there's the additional element that the director mentioned of getting all the equipment, because it has the potential to put every single piece of equipment that the road department uses, the fire department, the sheriff department, all of their personnel. And then you just assign those as teams or as resources, and then it tracks it. And then at the end, as Director Blanchard mentioned, then once you put it in there and track those eligible activities and the equipment, then it populates those FROC forms, it populates the FEMA forms, so literally it takes that stage out. So we have a significant amount of training yet to do on the entire process. To get just through the initial damage assessment, we were fairly successful with that just-in-time training that we've done, but it's kind of difficult because we need to get all of the road department, all of the county employees, all of the firefighters, and it's difficult to get all those folks together, in the same place for the training.
Right. But if you had to say on the library, you're 50% or what?
We're more than that as far as putting the library together.
Okay,
But
yeah.
the more important part is, we've taught, again, I know Dennis says about 60, the just-in-time training, though, we basically taught them how to turn the car on
Yeah.
and drive her into the parking lot. There's a lot more things this does that
That'll
we need
do,
to have more
sure.
training on. But talking about the library specifically, we have most of the equipment in there, not all of it. We need to go back and do another review, because we basically said, this is how you enter some of the equipment. We need to go back and have a review on it. But we are close to that.
Okay.
Then the biggest thing is, then we need to go out and do some more enhanced training, because there's a lot of other things that it can do. One of the things we talked about in the road department is the maintenance. Some of the maintenance work, we can document that, which will be huge, and that came into play in this particular storm season. Was we've been talking about this for a couple of years. FEMA changed after Irma what you have to have to show that the roads were in some type of normal driving and
Right.
without needing repair. We asked FEMA's guidance for, do you need pictures and this stuff? They said, we're not going to give you any guidance. If you turn in, we will tell you whether it's good enough or not. So there is some documentation we can do with the crisis track, which will save all that stuff, including some other things we're doing from the outside, as far as actually having a LiDAR come around and drive through too.
Okay.
Quick question on that. Since training is so critical to have success, and we have most of our storms, most of our times when we activate the EOC is predominantly during hurricane season, which starts in June.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a plan to get everybody up to speed before we have the next hurricane season?
We do, yes, sir, and this is the start of it.
Okay, thank you.
And again, it's going to take, I say trainings, it's going to take multiple educational processes, and because each group is a little bit different. But again, we wanted to try and open it up. This is the big view, and then we're going to start drilling down into not only the CEMP, which is the what your responsibilities are, but then we're going to do some of the targeting on, this is how you operate crisis track, if this is in your wheelhouse to do those types of things.
Is the
EOC's response only in Baker County, or do you have an agreement to support anybody else, neighboring counties, or?
So we will, and we've done that. We've gone to Lafayette County, we went down to Lee County, Charlotte County, and we can do that two ways. We can respond through the Florida Department of Emergency Management. We can also do that through the Florida Sheriff's Association to respond to any of those, and we've done that multiple times.
And they're pretty much trained the same, so when you show up, you're doing the same thing that they're doing.
Yes, and that's why the ICS process is important, is so you know that when I go to Lafayette County or I go to Lee County, that we're following that process.
Okay.
Some of the things to talk about, mass care, thank goodness, I hope we don't have to worry about that, but is how we're going to be handling the mass. When it comes to sheltering, we've been very lucky here. We don't have many people come to our shelter, just our general population shelter. We probably have more people coming from Georgia than they are from Baker County that come to that. That's at the elementary school. Then on the special needs shelter, I believe we've got, off the top of my head, last list I saw was about 80 that are on our list, but realistically, I think 14 was a high number that we've had show up at the hospital, that we've been there for that type of situation. Irma was probably our most recent, where we had a lot of people, and that's, I think, on our special needs shelter, we had 47 people that had shown up. So, again, thank goodness we don't really have to staff a lot for those types of things. Other counties have usually multiple shelters that they open up. Most of our people have friends or family or go to hotels, but that's something that we're looking at right now as far as increasing our sheltering footprint. Food and water, that's what is impacted by needing for the community, and that's why we did the pods out there. We took the food, the water, the MREs, and some of the hot meals, and even some diapers and things like that, and started distributing them. And it was very well thought of by a lot of people that had not seen that before in this area. Demobilization. This is something, as far as the Emergency Operations Center we train for, when you start mobilizing, you plan on demobilizing, because you don't want your resources out there longer than you need them to have them out there. And I can tell you, if you're borrowing from somebody else, they're asking you the same thing. When are you done? When can you turn it loose? Okay? So that's a process we are constantly thinking about, when can we turn something loose. So one, it's not costing anymore, and they can go back to either normal business, or they can go to a place that's more affected than you are and help them there. All right, so that's my 10,000-foot view. I know we've gone along, and you had a chance to ask some questions. Are there any other questions that you've jogged in your mind that you wanted to ask? Group hug.
I'm waiting for the training.
Okay, so yes, that's going to be one of the next things coming up. I've asked Keith Pruitt with the state to come in and talk a little bit about a review of what I talked about, some of the important things, and that's from the state's perspective, because we do work together on how important some of these nuances are, and you know, they understand we're a physically constrained county too. I mean, obviously by statute, so we don't have a lot. But the good thing is, with the partners out there, we have a lot of people that our team has been able to recruit to come in and help us. Not only some other counties will do it, but also on the state level, they've come in and working with us. And the training is probably the biggest thing. Like I said, I planned before the storm to start working on this, because we got to a level with Crisis Track that we could start doing that, and bam, we got hit. So we had to put some of this, manual stuff on the back burner. But I've been, since the storm was happening, I can tell you, they know this. I've been calling, going, okay, when can we get started? When can we start? I was hoping we were going to do it last month, but again, based on a few things, we weren't able to. But I'm not going to give up, because I know how important.
Excuse me.
I've seen what good we've done with the community. We've got a long way to go, but I've got the passion, and I know Dennis has the passion. We're going to keep going on it, and Scott keeps right behind us, pushing us, keeping us going. So I'm going to make sure I represent Baker County well.
I do have a question.
Yes.
And I clearly do not understand the differences as when it comes into after an event. For example, a storm event.
Yes.
Right? A hurricane. How do we decipher? Because first of all, the governor typically declares a state of emergency. Then the county declares a state of emergency. That puts us eligible for funding.
Eligible, yes.
Okay. is that funding coming from the state? Is it coming from the federal? Because we deal with FEMA. Where's the money coming from, and who are we trying to make happy with to get the funding? Do we have to satisfy the state if it's FEMA money, or is the state handling it on behalf of? Who is handling and who's making the decisions? Who are we coordinating with? How's it flow?
Great question. So most of the money is pass-through money from the federal government, okay? So we have to take care of both of them. All right?
Passes through the state
That's-
From the feds
well, going
through
from
the
feds
state.
to the state, to us.
to us.
Okay, it's a combination of both, okay, in some cases. All right. In this particular case, some of the funding that you saw where we were signing, that's actually from the federal government. And we're applying for a grant, because that's what it is, it's a grant, that we're applying for reimbursement. Is that application. That's coming directly from FEMA. Now, the state is helping us along with that process to make sure we're documenting everything properly to push through, because the state is basically approving us to go forward.
So the funding is the state's not actually providing funding. It's actually FEMA's funding that the state is administering.
If you want to speak to that.
Am I saying that correctly?
We were talking thresholds, I'm sorry, I missed the question.
So,
Sounds
so
like it.
where, in other words, the money coming from the state, or is it coming straight from the federal government?
So federal government is going to be a reimbursement, so we would see that up front. What we have to, and so this goes back to John's point, there is this ongoing mission that we have at the state. We're evaluating eligibility and validating whether something is a reimbursable expense, meaning we know federal offset is going to replenish what is spent, or specifically in a fiscally constrained county, if it's something that exceeds the county's ability to fund, then that's where the state would fund that money. So at the county level, you would get funding in most instances regardless. Whether that would be offset with federal reimbursement is going to depend on the activity and whether or not it's eligible. I'll use this, and I hate to use this word, debris. Debris is inevitable at the end of any disaster, specifically a hurricane. When it comes to the debris expense, the state does not manage, control, or even monitor the contracts for the vendor removers. Those are county vendor contracts, and we'll say it's Blue Sky. This is as part of your CEMP, this is what gets activated to remove this debris. Depending on where that debris is, if it's in private roadways, if it's in private canals, if it's on private property, it may not be eligible to be reimbursed to offset the cost of that debris removal. But if it exceeds the county's ability to pay for it, even if it's with your contract, the state, out of our EPRF funds, Emergency Preparedness Readiness Fund, we can pay some of those costs. We have a few pools of resources, a disaster foundation, et cetera, where we would leverage to offset that cost to the county. So it's not a clear-cut answer. It just really depends on the type of activity that's being performed. What's the eligible? Is it a part of a tornado as a result of the hurricane, and did it only affect certain counties? I mean, certain neighborhoods within a county, whereas the rest of the county didn't have much damage. Those costs may not trigger the threshold to get federal reimbursement, but the state can still come in and help that. And so that's why we always have to monitor through the county EM, hey, what's going on, what's the ground truth, what are your costs, what are your mission requests, and does it exceed your current contractual capabilities?
Okay, but however, if we don't have the appropriate documentation of the effort and the expense, because first of all, if we are having to provide that service up front, of course, debris removal, perfect example, you got to get the debris out of the way.
Yeah.
Done. You can't wait to get all these approvals. You got to get the debris out of the way so people can get out of the roadway, get out of their driveway, to get out of their home, to get to work, to get back to, right? So there's an expense already that the county is obligated for because we're activated that debris. If we don't have the proper documentation or haven't done it properly, then we are at risk to not get reimbursement.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So this really always comes back to a simple thing. If the documentation at the initial onset isn't done correctly, we are at risk of we're at risk of that expenditure being a county expenditure with no chance of getting reimbursement because we failed to do the proper documentation.
In some cases, yes, sir.
And on the surface, sir, up front, it may be an eligible activity, and it may look, and so through FROC and through some of the processes that we have, we can front that money to
Okay.
help the county. Then it can't always be de-obligated if it's not done in accordance with the scope, or it is done. Again, we start going into private roadways, we start doing things that are non-eligible activities, then that becomes a risk of the state who has fronted the money, and we have encumbered that. So having your debris monitors in place and set up in your contracts that are existing all the time, you know, we see your blue sky debris contract. Who's your hauler? Who's your monitor? It's kind of the check and balance. You got the hauler that's executing it, and you got the monitor that's watching. And then that is done in conjunction with whatever the plan is at the county level. And I'll say this, the state validates the county's CEMPs, but there could be gaps in those CEMPs that we are not privy to. That becomes that county, municipality, local level engagement, and that's where I think this body can help that and reinforce the county director, because he may not know what he doesn't know, and the plan on paper may look as though it is sound and everything's accounted for, but in execution mode, where are the assisted living facilities? Who's monitoring the nursing home evacuation routes? Things like that can come to light. And it does put a lot of burden on, hey, this is done in accordance with the plan, but the plan's got a gap. That's why the practicing, the education, the rehearsals, and then just the general wherewithal from all the parties involved, making sure that up front you have an understanding, but adjust on the fly.
But go back to the original question. We are never making direct application to FEMA. We work through the state to get the federal reimbursement. Am I correct? So at the onset of it, what is absolutely essential and critical is, Dennis, you're shaking your head no.
So, on the application, it's a mixture.
It's a very complicated deal that he just put out there. Debris removal is probably the worst one to use, but there are times, so the projects, and I'm just saying this in fairness and honesty, the conversations we had before, those projects that we have submitted now are going to FEMA, right? The state is a part of that process, and through the FROC process and through the vetting side of it to make sure that it's there, but those applications are through FEMA. Then FEMA provides that money for those projects we talked about to the state, and the state reimburses us.
Well,
That's actually a direct FEMA application that we're applying.
But I would assume that we have to coordinate with the state before we ever go send it to FEMA.
Well, the state's basically helping us do it.
Yes and no. It happens both ways, actually, because when FEMA starts making the decision of whether or not to give the funds, they're right beside the state at that CRC level, and where they're making those reviews to determine whether or not all the eligibility requirements are there, all the documentation is there. That's done in conjunction, the state and FDM, with us as a kind of a second partner in that process, but it's primarily made at that FDM and state level.
Okay, so although we will work with the state, partner with the state, there are some times that we send our submittals directly to FEMA, but the money is going to come back through the state to us. All right, and you are going to make sure that whatever we submit in thing works correctly, and whatever we've done meets all those requirements for us to be able to use that money. And it really comes back to the onset, for us to get the reimbursements, we got to have the proper documentation of all the activities that we've done pre and post storm. Okay.
And that's part of what we had already started with many of our partners. When you talk about us going out and cutting trees to clear roadways and whatnot, the 214, and we screen that. When they get started, as far as our EOC process, they have that 214 to fill out. And when they complete their shift, they've got to turn that in with all the eligible activity they did, which talks about those 3 documents I talked about, was what the activity they did, okay, as well as how they turned in their time, in other words, their time card says they did X amount during a storm-related activity or event, because it may not just be a storm. And then the fact they're notice deposits, we have all 3 of those. And and believe me, we've got to look at all, make sure, including supervisor signatures on the forms that they are done. We've been doing that. We're building on that for other processes that would be eligible activities as well.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is what I'm seeing, what I've heard from before today, it is a lot more than just filling out them logs of what your daily
Yes, sir.
activity
That's
is.
correct, it is.
It's also making sure our entire team that's out trying to get the work done, they've got to take time to document every one of the pre and post the work that they've done
Yes, sir.
before they did it and after they did it in order to get reimbursement. So we've got folks, it's far more than just saying a daily log. It is documenting the work before documenting the damage
Yes, sir.
and documenting the repair. That's got to be done and kept up with as well all along, not just fill out a daily log. It's a
Correct.
project-specific documentation for every one of these things that we're trying to do.
It is, and I wasn't trying to get all into the weeds of that,
Okay.
but you're right, and that's where Crisis Track is gonna help us with this.
That's what I was
What-
thinking.
It's even documenting before the storm
Well,
comes.
well, that's why I keep coming back to this and keep making a point that I keep coming back to. It's great to get the money back, but there's effort that must be done up front, documenting before the damage that was done and documenting the repairs that was done if we're going to continue to get this money back. If we
Yes.
don't have that documentation, it's not going to get approved at the state.
Correct.
And that's what I keep making the point I'm really trying to make is there's effort that's got to be done when this is happening, and hurrying up and getting the work done and then asking for forgiveness for not doing the process doesn't work.
Does not work.
You got to have the pre and post documentation.
And to really help that also through either staff augmentation or manning at the county EOC, we have folks from the state that are there, as you know, as John was mentioning, all the sections, the different ESFs. They can then work within the county to help eligibility be determined before it even gets submitted. So there is a direct line at times for that coordination to help, so that on the front side, we're eliminating more errors than we're processing.
And we're,
Idealistically. In
And we're-
reality, things are still gonna happen and errors are still gonna pass.
and we're doing multiple reviews to help eliminate that. And I know that even the FEMA people that have come in and looked at our process, they were excited to see that we were going to the next level, because I don't want any de-obligation. I know some counties that have had that in the past, don't want that.
The next level being
Better training.
training, crisis
Well,
track.
So there's two things.
Tracking.
Is training the process,
Yeah.
okay, and then the oversight of the process to make sure, and that's really what it's not just getting someone to do the work and follow the paperwork
Right.
or the documentation. We then have to have oversight and review that documentation multiple times.
Sure.
Because if anyone's ever looked at paperwork, after you look at something for about 5 or 10 minutes, you start losing that gusto to keep looking at it. But we have to do that. So I can tell you, we have a constant review process and more than one set of eyes that are looking at this stuff, because we find mistakes. Something as simple as a supervisor didn't put a signature. Okay? We've got to go back to that supervisor and get it. And I wasn't trying to get into that weeds, but it is a process, and that's why we're starting this training. And it might not necessarily be where you need to know how to fill out a 214 other than you've been exposed to it, but definitely the rest of our staff that's physically doing these things, they have to. And part of that is going to be the follow-up training, where we actually do training events where they come out there and use the crisis track, fill out the forms, even in a Blue Skies training environment. So when we have the real gray skies go out there, it's not something we got to go, I don't remember how to do it, because I can tell you, we've got equipment out there that some people, like a GPS on our side-by-side, they were shown it once. I can tell you in 6 months, they don't know how to use it anymore. So you have to keep doing these things, because some of it is repetition. And that's what we're trying to do with this process now.
How much of that Blue Sky training do you do?
I'm sorry?
How much of the Blue Sky training do you do?
Well, we're doing more and more of it. Again, that's the process is we do try and do it a couple of times, but in some of these things, especially with the crisis track, we're going to have to do more of it. And we realized that when we came up with the storms, because we saw some challenges with certain aspects of it. And again, like Dennis said, we just did the real-time training. So it was just to get them out there to basically do some of the damage assessments for us.
On the fly.
There's a whole suite of stuff that they have not, some of the people have not started on yet. And that's going to be more extensive for them to do that. And that's where we're going to have to go out there. And I can tell you, a plug for Shoals Park, that is a great place for us to go out there and do some of that training without affecting roadways and things like that. So that's been.
I understand the importance of classroom training and the requirements to have that, but there's no substitute for hands-on training.
Hands-on, yes, sir.
You can go to college and get all the degrees you want until you get a job and you're working. You don't know what's
That
real life.
muscle and brain memory is more important than sitting in a classroom,
Mhm.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Keith, did you want to add? I'm sorry.
I'll let Grant.
Oh, Grant, okay.
My name is Grant Goodwin. I'm the Executive Operations Coordinator for the division. Previously, I served in what is Josh's role as a regional coordinator. I just want to kind of explain some of the things we do here at the state and how we complement what the county's doing. A former female administrator made the phrase, locally executed, state managed, federally supported. And what that means is, and Director Blanchard did a good point of, when an incident is cascading, more and more resources are being needed. How do you manage that? So what we do at the Division of Emergency Management, is help supplement the needs that you have and arise in the county during a disaster. Now, we talked about in these slides, and I'll try and go back there's a slide and it gave the amounts.
For the threshold?
The threshold, yes, sir.
Going back?
Backwards.
What was the?
Anyways, I think I passed it. The point that we try to make is we're here to help supplement. Now, the threshold that he pointed out it was about $130,000 that Baker County needs to hit. That's just Baker County. Throughout all of the counties, and including what we do at the state, we have to meet a threshold of $40 million. Some of these things, as we're here in Severe Weather Awareness Week, we might have a winter storm, and we had snow a couple weeks ago. We may get a squall line that throws off a couple tornadoes, and it hits maybe Baker County and Gilchrist County or something like that. The odds are that the damage from those two storms, those two tornadoes, make it to $40 million pretty low. So to your point of how do we fund these things, you have to have those contingencies. It will rely you at the local level. When those thresholds are met and we submit it to FEMA, FEMA then reviews it. As long as it's approved, it goes to the president's desk for consideration to sign as a major disaster declaration. That's where this whole FEMA process comes in, and those two big categories that Director Blanchard talked about, public assistance and individual assistance. And we didn't really dive into that, but that's where your residents would apply. That would be directly to FEMA, whereas public assistance is from the county level through the state and then reviewed by FEMA at the federal level. And then, yes, it is a reimbursement-based program that funnels down as the state being the pass-through entity. Those are big things that we want to hammer out. And Director Guthrie, in his 30 years of experience in law enforcement, he spent his last 12 years with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in the emergency preparedness group. He, as the sole person of that group, filled out all of the FEMA forms to get reimbursement back on the overtime for the officers, for all the extra work that was above and beyond the standard work that the county would do. And it was very tedious, and he made mistakes, and FEMA rejected a lot of that money. And he said, if I can ever get into a point someday where I can change that, I will. And through his tenure, he came to the division as a chief of staff, deputy director, now the executive director, and has changed it holistically to the point where FEMA says it's the best practice in the nation. And that is FROC. And I'm glad that Baker County is a part of it. And basically what you guys are doing through Director Blanchard is reviewing all of your procurement, reviewing all of the contracts and your plans and procedures before a storm to reduce the risk. No matter what, at the end of the day, when you go in and start working with public assistance with FEMA, they're going to check all of these things to make sure you had a policy and that you were following what you said you were going to do. What we're trying to do is do that in the beginning so that when those questions arise, you can point, yes, that's it. So we have a team. We have a big team in Tallahassee who goes and reviews all of your procurement to make sure it's federally applicable and all of these other things, so that when it's time to go, we know that you're not a risk to the state. Because when a county, let's say they get a project approved by FEMA. FEMA says, yes, here's your $1 million project, go ahead and start working on it. Well, if through time you start to build the project to rebuild, and FEMA then realizes you just sole sourced this during the middle of the disaster, and there was nowhere in your state of emergency where you could have done that. You just ripped it. That's unfair. We can't fund that. Who's that going to hurt? Me. That hurts the state, because it goes out of the state's piggy bank, not yours. And then we have to figure out, we the state have to figure out some type of repayment plan to help offset that $1 million cost years down the road. But what we're trying to do with FROC is stop that from happening in the beginning. Now, a perfect case example of this was in a county to our west in the Panhandle, another fiscally constrained county. They had a $85 million deobligation. A very simple problem, just like one check of the box. They said, yeah, we can do this. Their consultant said that, their recovery consultant, on a project for a road, yeah, you can go ahead and, this dirt road, you can go ahead and pave it and call it mitigation. They lost $85 million. So now that county is like, oh no, we can't pay that. So it falls on us. We're trying to stop those things. And so FROC is a free program that we're putting into. And an additional thing that Deputy Director Pruitt talked about is the recovery consultants that we bring out. To date, for the city, the county, and the sheriff's office, the three entities that applied for FEMA funding, we've had over 1,000 hours and close to $300,000 worth of consulting to help build those project worksheets that you send, the FEMA forms. So we are trying to help, and we don't mind taking that cost, because if we can know that we have a quality person who's helping the county build those projects, we're not going to find those $85 million deobligations 5 years down the road after Hurricane Michael like we did last year. So we are very forward-leaning to try and help all of our communities to make sure that they're ready for a storm, and we're just here to supplement and help. Some other things that I wanted to point out, but actually there's just one other thing in where we're forward-facing is with deobligations in particular on FEMA PA, public assistance, is roads and beaches. I know you don't deal with beaches here, but beaches get deobligated all the time because we don't know how much sand did you have here at this engineer beach before the storm went through. It's hard to validate. Same with road conditions, and counties and entities have been very proactive in ways that they try and show this is the pre-disaster condition of the road, whether it's like they put a camera or a dash cam on a mail truck or a dump truck or a garbage truck, or just have their public works go out and do it. We at the state have gotten a contract to do LiDAR of all of our state roads and all of the coastlines. We've done that last year, and it's something we're trying to continue to do every 2 to 3 years, so that we have a baseline showing this is what roads look like. So when you go in to say, hey FEMA, help me rebuild this road, and can you help me pay for it, you can. I'll lead with this, and Deputy Director Pruitt will help us here for a minute too. We want to help. We absolutely want to help. I was with Director Guthrie last Thursday in Jacksonville, got the call from the county saying, hey, we need help with these beds at our jail. Is there anything you can do? Absolutely. We did. Will that be reimbursed by FEMA? No. You needed 60 beds for ICE detainees, but they were very particular. You can't just get a box, like a regular spring bed, because there's metal in it, so on and so forth. So we help source them, get them. We're here. There's very odd end things here, but we're here to help manage. We're not here to take over. We're just here to support the county, and we do appreciate the opportunity to come. And we're always here. And Josh and whoever is our new coordinator on the response side are always a phone call away. They're your eyes and ears, and they're the forward face of the division here in the county. So with that, I can take questions because I rambled for about 5 minutes, but if anything, I'll give the deputy director.
I want to comment. One, first of all, we greatly appreciate the assistance. And this past year around, this cycle, have been very helpful. And so I don't want to understate the appreciation for that. We do. My questions were not so much intended to be directed as anything negative. My point I keep making is there has to be ample documentation before work is done and when the work is finished if we are going to ask for reimbursement. You guys have a certain, you have to be able to document
Correct.
that it was storm related. So that's the point I keep coming back to. The training people to know what to do and how to do it, it takes extra effort. You raise a very good point as well, in that the state spends money to run LIDAR for the beaches and the state roads. The state's got a much bigger budget than we do.
Correct.
And we got a lot of roads and a lot of dirt roads, and that's where our challenges are. It's not, our challenges aren't as much on asphalt roads, it's dirt roads. And we don't have that recording, that documentation before the storm happens. And that's would be a big stretch for us to try to get that before a storm happens. But it's imperative that we think through how do we have the appropriate documentation before something happens so that it can be approved at a state level when we move through it. And I think that's where we got to continue to work to understand what it is we can do that's within the confines of what we can, right? And I think because I understand the position you're in, you've got to make sure that what we're asking for is directly related to the storm, but we've got to be able to document that too.
Question I have for you, going on with Commissioner Bennett, you had said that you had LADAR come in and they done it, and it's y'all doing it every 3 or 4 years. So if we put a camera on our motor graders when they're preparing the roads, say once a year, this is the condition of the road that we're trying to keep up. Storm comes in, bridge is gone, you can present that video or that whatever we have to show this is the condition of the road before the storm.
Correct.
And that would be acceptable.
So the more you can document, the better. So if that's one way that you use it, that's one way that FEMA will take that and look and see what the road condition was. There's no one size fits all.
Right.
FEMA tries to be very open-ended in that. So I've seen very creative ways on how, and that's another way that you can get that done too.
Just wondering.
Yeah, 'cause we can't fly a LiDAR on all of our county roads.
Maybe
We're
we
doing it
could,
with
if the
dash
motor
cams
graders
now.
grade them, and we
Right,
put
you
a
do
camera
dash
on.
cams, but
Yeah, we do that now before storms. So usually Chris, Jason, and Greg with our GIS department, in areas that we know are prone to be an issue before a storm hits, we go out and we get that active data and those pictures. And we actually did it between every single storm. So those guys were out sometimes taking pictures of what roads we cleaned up, and then just a few weeks later you may have another storm and you're out there again surveying the damage, and then back again because you've cleaned it up and now another storm's coming. So some of those areas may get recorded multiple times a year just to make sure that the data is accurate.
One other thing that we do at the state, and the director really pushed this last hurricane season, was EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center support. You asked the question about mutual aid. How do you help other counties? Yes, there's ways that you can get that done by the state. You have to use all of those FROC forms so that everything's consistent. The state can get that reimbursed by FEMA, but the state will cover that cost. And Baker County can go down to Collier and help out. But when he brought up the preparedness messaging of, we see the 3 to 5 day cone, we might as well, go trim our limbs and make sure that everything's tidied up before the storm. After Ian, we saw a lot of burnout. There was a lot of turnover in EM down in Southwest Florida. They had to go 24/7 for months. And these people who were working these jobs were in the same boat. Their homes were destroyed. They had their own families. They had to take care of them too. And so we have EOC support. We'll bring personnel in if it's warranted and needed. All you have to do is ask, and we can have support staff come and run so that your employees can take a 12-hour break, go home, be with their families, clean up their yards. We're trying to think outside the box in order to make your situation run as smoothly as possible. Granted, it's a disaster, but we're trying to streamline the process and just make sure that you have everything that you need.
I was more focused on opportunities for in-the-fire, hands-on training for our people. The disaster here is limited, and it doesn't come every year, and you don't have that opportunity. So we get a core of people that have a high competency. I just feel a lot better about it, so that's why I was asking that.
With that, I'll bring up Deputy Director Pruitt.
Gentlemen, ma'am, thank you guys for taking a little bit of time and allowing us to come down and accompany the county team. And not to belabor a dead horse, but I really can't emphasize enough that mantra of it's federally funded, it's state managed, but it's locally executed. Because at the end of the day, this is your foxhole. And as a retired military guy, I can tell you that understanding those, I guess, siloed approaches do often have a place. And, understanding the priorities of the county help the state nurture that, and that's our goal. We don't necessarily want to come in, and I will tell you, it is not our job to enter your county and to do anything outside of what you want. That is why, having that relationship with our county emergency manager at our level is so valuable, because we're trusting that he is nested with your priorities, and that the priorities of the members of your county are nested with the county itself, and then therefore it's a collaborative, cohesive effort. It's not this combative environment. 67 counties in the state, and I can assure you there are a lot of opinions on what works and what doesn't, and there's a lot of different cookies in the bakery. But at the end of the day, it's what tastes best to you, and that's what we want to emphasize and try to really bring to the recovery efforts. Response is going to be that initial, you're in the ring and you just got knocked down, we got to get back up on our feet. It's going to be messy at times, but as long as we can get you back up and running, that's our goal. But the thrones of recovery that lead into mitigation, that's where that documentation becomes so paramount. Having everything that you can, ad nauseum, pictures, documentation, email traffic, anything that shows GIS data, it's huge. What was your power infrastructure? What did it look like pre-landfall? What did it look like post-impact? Being able to articulate that is only going to enhance your ability to get those reimbursable expenses offset. But at the end of the day, the last thing we want you worried about is how much something costs. Obviously, it's in the back of our minds at all times. We're stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. We want to maintain, efficient cost discipline. But at the end of the day, life, limb, or eyesight, we've got to get you right. We've got to get you as close to whole after the events as you were before, because it's not necessarily an equal destructive path when any storm comes through. As I was stating earlier, St. Lucie County, I'll use that as an example. Several tornadoes, didn't have what I would say hurricane-related damage, but the tornadoes, as a result of the hurricane activity, caused significant damage. Really focused on just a couple of neighborhoods. A lot of destruction there. I think 56, wasn't it? Just in one neighborhood, there was 56 homes destroyed. And during Hurricane Milton, there were 42 EF2 or EF3 tornadoes that spawned throughout the state. That's the largest single-day tornadic activity that we've had. We don't want you guys to worry about that. We want you to have a nested understanding of your CEMP, exercise those functions with your fire chiefs, with your hospitals, with your nursing homes, with your health community, with your first responding community, with your utility companies, whether it's co-ops or FPL, and have all of that funneling back through our county EM. We have daily calls. We have 11:15 call, a 5:15 p.m. call, where we listen statewide. What are your unmet needs? What do you have? What are your priorities? And we want to make sure that those priorities are in line with what support we are either able to provide or what we need to contract for you. We want to be your ambassadors. We want to be that person that can go to FEMA and say, this isn't right, this is what it was, let us be that intermediary. We don't want that to be your burden. But at the end of the day, I know Director Guthrie is very adamant, if I can say, but he understands the frustrations, not here, but in some counties when it comes to that collaborative environment. The best recipe for success that we can say are where you guys are on the same sheet. And to your point, sir, understanding if documentation seems to be the biggest concern, make sure that that receives some of the biggest focus. And we're going to provide not just resources during, but we provide before. There's 4 pillars of what we do at emergency management. We've got preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Ancillary to that, we have IT, we have finance, and just in the last 6 years, FDM has processed $11.5 billion over a 6-year period. Outside of our Department of Finance Services, there's no other entity that processes that much money on an annual basis. So we understand your concerns when it comes to where's the money coming from, where's it going to go. I can just tell you that as you set up your training and you set up your priorities, use everything that the state has at your disposal. We have IPPWs, we have regional training opportunities, we have the ICS and the NIMS construct courses that we try to sponsor. We'll provide teaching opportunities, and that's another. The counties work together. Collier County does it, Columbia County does it. We don't have any coming up. Folks from Baker County can go there, and the state can help with that, and we do. I really appreciate your time. I'm open to any questions, but I really think that we have touched on that macro view today, and I don't want to delve too far down into the micro, because we can stand here for a while, unless you order dinner. I don't know.
We have a board meeting, so we can.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, but we do have a comment. We really appreciate what the state of Florida does for Baker County on all aspects. Appreciate
Couldn't
it.
do it any other way, that's for sure.
We appreciate y'all being here tonight.
Thank you so much. John?
All right, so I know we beat a dead horse. One of the things I wanted to reiterate is, I know that Dennis put up here some of the ESF functions that we're going to be going to each of our different divisions and having them working with them to make sure that they are in compliance and some of the training that needs to take place, whether it's individually or holistic on the whole operation, are being done. And I would like the board to participate with that in reviewing our CDMP and looking at that. Again, not that we tell these different groups how they're going to perform, just that we need to know that when an incident happens, how they're going to perform, and we put it on the documentation, make sure it's legal and ethical, and with the guidelines in there. Some of the FROC training we've already been doing. Some divisions have been slow to respond, and that's one of the reasons we're starting it this way, is to make sure that we get the buy-in and the documentation is uploaded to FROC so we can make sure that everything is solid in that respect. Yeah.
Derek, I do have a question in regards to, we've got all the county functions, county offices on there. We've got the power companies. We got the Council on Aging. But where do we coordinate with the medical facilities here, the nursing homes as well as the hospital?
So some of the nursing homes, they're actually individual phone calls. They've been asked to show up at some of our partners' meetings. In some cases, they don't actually show up. Now, the hospital, obviously, they have a dual role, though. They do have a participant that shows up. We had a partners meeting today, and they did have a representative there. So they are part of our EOC function.
Okay.
What about Division of Forestry?
They show up as well, sir.
Mhm.
Both the state and the federal show up. And we work together on talking about prescribed burns and those types of things. As a matter of fact, there's a program we're looking to put out to maybe the community to see if they want to participate and to get prescribed burning done for them.
Through the forestry.
Yes, sir. So one of the things, again, I want to bring home is you are our policy group. And again, most, I would say, day to day, my conversation is with the county manager. But again, it is a representation of all of you. And that's why we want to bring it. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, we'll have more of these conversations and keep feeding the information, especially that we have projects ongoing, but to talk about some of these things. And again, as the training comes up, we will open it up if you all want to participate. Some of it may not necessarily apply to you, but if you're bored or you want to just see how some of these things function, certainly we would invite you to come and participate. And if you don't have any other questions for me, I'll back out so maybe we can have a break before the 5 o'clock.
Any
But
questions,
again,
comments?
I really want to thank all of you for allowing us to do this workshop. It's been something I wanted to do for months, if not longer. And again, this is just the start. This is not the end. And I appreciate everybody that came in to help me that from the state too as well.
On behalf of the
Shows our
board,
commitment.
on behalf of the board, I want to say we appreciate your enthusiasm and the hard work that you've put into the EOC since you've been a manager. It really shows, and our community sees it also. So
It is certainly a team effort, I have to tell you that.
we appreciate it, and we appreciate the support from the state and the training. And don't try to train me anymore because my mind's getting too old to remember anything else.
If I can, you can. Thank you all
We
very much.
appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
We're going to close the workshop to 5 o'clock meeting.
I see those all going to
Good.
And you're live.
I'll call this board county commissioner meeting. I'm kind of hoarse and coughing, so y'all excuse me tonight. If I get too crazy, I'll let the vice chair take over and I'll walk outside. Because sometimes it gets uncontrollable. I ain't contagious or anything, it's just I don't know what it is. I'm not looking. I do have this right here. Yes, sir. I'd ask if anyone has a phone or whatever you have making noise, if you put it on silent, please, or if you would, just put it on vibrate, whatever you can, or turn it off so that we don't disturb the meeting. We're going to ask Commissioner Bennett to lead us in prayer and a pledge tonight before we get our meeting started.
If you would please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you once again, and first and foremost, we want to thank you for all the many blessings that you already bestowed upon us. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. Thank you for the weather that we're having here today. Thank you for allowing us all to be here and be here safely, Heavenly Father. We ask as we move forward in this commission meeting that you'll please give us all guidance, give us discernment to do what's right, help us to do what's in the best interest of the public that we so desire to do so, Heavenly Father. And we ask that you'll help us to do it in a way that brings honor to your name and glory. We ask again for all your many blessings. We ask you to continue to be with us. Watch over and guide and protect each and every one of us, our family and our loved ones. And it's these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. If anyone wants to speak to the board tonight, if you look on the table by the door, no, it's in the center now. On the back wall, there's speaker cards and the agenda. If you want to fill out a speaker card, get it to Miss Sarah. She'll get it to me, and then I'll let you speak at the appropriate time. We encourage public comments at any time. And we'll move forward to our approval of the agenda if there's not any changes.
move we approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Has everyone had a chance to look at the consent agenda items? If so, I'll second approval on those.
Would you approve the consent agenda as presented?
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And moving on to our next item, which is the elected officials.
Get your clerks here.
Do I see?
She's
There
on
she
the back
is
right.
on the back. All right, and the next item we have is public comment. I don't have any speaker cards. Ms. Sarah, did you receive any? All right. And the next item we have is our new business. And number one is the Habitat for Humanity, Kevin Collison.
Kevin Collison, close. It's not a common name.
Well,
Thank you.
I gave
Chair.
it a shot anyway. Most of the time I won't even give it a shot. So.
Did well. So Chairman Anderson, Commissioners, thank you for this time to share a little bit about what Habitat for Humanity is doing in our region and in Baker County, and residents, citizens, other guests. Happy for you to hear as well. I'm the Director of Marketing, Communications, and Faith Relations, so I wear a lot of different hats in my work with Habitat for Humanity. I've presented you with some basic information. There are also the same information is available at the tables in the back for anyone that's interested. Habitat for Humanity of Jacksonville is better known since 1988 as Habijax, our nickname. We were founded by 9 visionaries from area churches, and in nearly 37 years of work, we have helped about 2,400 families achieve home ownership, mostly by building new homes and a few times by recycling and rehabbing homes, but offering them at an affordable rate. We build brand new, beautiful, quality homes using our own not-for-profit construction team, as well as professional tradesmen, subcontractors, and of course volunteers. We don't give these homes away. We could probably do that 1 or 2 times a year, but the model of Habitat for Humanity is we sell them with an affordable mortgage to families who are moderate income. It's workforce housing, really. We serve, under the 120% AMI limits that HUD sets for any given county. Baker County has not been served by a Habitat for Humanity affiliate since Habitat for Humanity got started in the 70s. We work with a lot of employers who employ Baker County residents, and there is a workforce housing problem across our region. We've talked about it with the Northeast Florida Regional Council and had some initial connections with Baker County. We've been welcomed. We're not the big bad city organization coming in to develop homes. We make the same profit off building one home as we do 100. That's zero. We want to serve more families, and we are eager to serve Baker County residents and workers as guided by the citizens of Baker County. We're not a government program. We are a Christian housing ministry, but we welcome anyone and everyone to help us who believes that everybody deserves a decent place to live, no matter who they are, so we don't discriminate. One, it's the law, but two, it's the right thing to do. Anybody deserves a decent place to live, no matter who they are. And we bring generous sponsors, volunteer power, donors to make it affordable for families. On Thursday at First Baptist Church McClenny at 5:30 p.m., we will have a town hall meeting. Again, 5:30 at First Baptist Church McClenny. That's a great place to ask questions. You've got an agenda to get through tonight. I'm going back to Clay County, the interloper who works in Duval County and lives in Clay County, but is really happy to share with you what we're doing. We've already permitted 2 homes in McClenny. We own property for about 4 more homes. We're looking for more land to build more homes. We're not trying to blow up Baker County or any particular municipality with homes, but we are responding to some real supply issues with housing, and we're looking for land. And as we've learned best practices across the Habitat for Humanity network, there are a lot of affiliates. By the way, we're all independently incorporated, so there's Clay Habitat for Humanity, Beaches Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity of Jacksonville will have a new name as soon as Habitat for Humanity International will give us permission to use it. It'd probably be Habitat for Humanity of Northeast Florida, because we now serve all of Baker County, all of Nassau County, and all of Duval County, except what's the coastal area east of St. John's Bluff Road, which is Beaches Habitat for Humanity. And we'll have a new name. We'll have a new regional approach. We're working with regional employers and government leaders, because that's really the model of success for Habitat for Humanity affiliates who've managed to make a dent in the housing supply. They partner in some way with various municipalities, county, city, state. We have good relationships with the state, a generous tax credit program that helps businesses support homes in a more advantageous way when it comes to their taxes. And we're excited to share what we're doing in Baker. We will be building homes this year. We will be seeking families this year. We will hope to close by the end of this year for the first families in Baker County. And we're just looking for partners, whether you're a volunteer or whether you're looking for how to spend SHIP funds or CDBG funds, not right now, but in the future. We've partnered, Nassau County has very generous down payment assistance that really is allowing us to scale up our home building efforts in Nassau County. So it's good to meet you. We're here to serve you, and our ears are wide open for ways that we can help Baker County families find a decent and affordable place to live. Thank you.
Yes.
Sure. First of all, I appreciate you coming out tonight. I run into some of your teammates and co-workers and colleagues at the regional council meeting event. I guess it was a month or so ago. And when I was made aware that you're actually doing some things here in Baker County, and your workshop was coming up 2 nights after this, I wanted to make sure we had the opportunity for you to come here so we could share as much word out as we can about your programs and
Thank
what
you.
you have to offer. From Baker County's perspective, or I would say we greatly appreciate y'all's effort here as well, because it does provide a much-needed service that is welcomed here as well. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate your effort being here. And I would encourage folks to come out and meet with you guys. Again, that is Thursday, February 6th. That is 2 nights from now. And it's at the First Baptist Church at 5:30. So anybody that has questions about the program, they will be here with a workshop to help share that information. So I'd encourage folks to come out and check with them. There's also opportunities to volunteer. And that's something I would encourage people to do. It does a great opportunity to serve the community. We have a lot of folks that indicated they would like to serve the community. This is a great way to do that. And again, these folks aren't in it trying to make money. They're trying to help provide a service here and help people in our county. So anytime we can help, you'd be helping build homes in our county. So please, I'd encourage you to do so and come out and on February 6th if possible as well. And appreciate you coming out this evening, Mr. Collison.
I thought I remembered you from the regional council now, I know. But anyway, have you reached out to the local churches?
We've begun reaching out to
A
those
lot of the
churches.
churches have volunteer programs, and they do a lot of that with their youth in our community, so that would be something I would definitely reach out.
There will be opportunities very shortly.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 2, project award, County Road 125 from Blair to Park. You better run on up here.
You got a lot
How y'all
going
doing
on.
tonight? Okay, the first one I come to you tonight with is what you just said. This is, we're asking, this is for the widening and resurfacing of 125 from Blair Circle to Park Street. And we're asking to award the project contractor is Anderson Columbia for, it's actually a typo on that front page. It's actually $1,102,491.48. And award the CEI to Locklear and Associates for $50,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, you better leave Baker County.
When is this going to get started? Do you have any idea?
This one, I haven't even got with the contractor yet on it. It will probably start as soon as they're done with the
127.
127 phase 3, I think. I got so many 125s and 127.
Phase 2. Phase 2.
Phase 2.
For whatever you do, do not stop them
Oh,
on
that one-
127.
Stop, trust me, that
Dude,
one-
that
Now,
one.
if you need to, go ahead.
No, sir, you won't. No, sir, 127 has waited its due time. Otherwise, 127 must
All
continue.
right, let's move on to the next. It's been approved. Item number 3, resolution 2025-06, Nursery Road Boulevard.
Supplement
Yeah.
to Nursery Boulevard. Yeah, this is, DOT has given us a supplemental agreement funding for $84,463.09, and that is enough to get the contractor going and the CEI work accomplished for that portion that is unpaved on that road right now.
Yes, sir.
No. Seeing if you want, it's his motion, it's his area. Move to approve.
Second.
Read by title. Yes, sir.
Resolution 2025-06, a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Baker County, Florida, authorizing the execution of a supplemental funding agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation, financial project number 438168-2-54-01.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 4, acceptance of road maps.
Okay, this next one is, I talked to y'all before about them redoing Richardson Road Bridge. They're gonna rebuild the bridge for us in the next couple of years. And basically, the first step is DOT hires a survey company to come out and
Right.
find, make sure we got enough land to do what they need to do and everything. So this is basically for a supplemental map that they designed. They looked up, they went to property appraiser's office and anywhere else that they can find information to find out property corners and everything else. The areas that they cannot find anything on, Jason and myself went out there and we found fences, found fence posts and everything, and established an actual maintenance that we've been maintaining for years, and that's what the maps are associated with. So that's what we're asking for, is to approve the maps, which are all in there on the desk. Y'all got copies of them there, but they're all in there in the conference room.
40 foot wide. 40 foot wide, is that what I see?
And there's one place that drops down to like 37 foot, and we can't, there's a fence on either side, so we can't really say, you know, maybe the fence should have been on the other side of the tree to get our 40 foot. We can't say for sure, so that's why I'm saying this is maintenance maps.
Okay.
It's down away from the bridge, but it's still, it is, I think it went down to 37 foot was the narrowest point.
So you need approval of the map
Yes, sir.
itself.
Of what we're going to maintain.
Second.
Okay.
Have a motion second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Quick question for you on that one. Do we take these maps and go have them recorded in any way so that they're a part of the official record now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Which, speaking of, before you leave, I need some signatures from you
Yeah,
all.
like-
We've got the actual Mylars that need to be signed, so if you'll just see us before you leave out of here.
Who has to sign them?
Was it all 5 board members or just the chairman?
I think it's just the chairman. Just the chairman.
Y'all can hang around if y'all want to.
No,
though.
sir.
Don't bother me. Keep going. Project number 5, project awards, Willis Hodges.
Okay, this one we have bounced around and bounced around and bounced around, but now we finally got it down. DOT gave us enough money to get this one so we can award Willis Hodges to CGC Incorporated as the contractor and Locklear and Associates for the CEI. CGC is this is for the base bid, so this is basically just the pipe work. This is what I told y'all last time, we were going to be doing just pipe work. And then once the pipe work gets done, we'll go in, the county will have to go in and we'll do the lime rock, and then we'll have to hire somebody to pave that section of county road up to the county property for the Council on Aging property. We'll have to pay for that out of our pocket. DOT would not. I tried to get that money, they said no.
Yeah, we
So
put the,
They gave us.
that's one of our
Yes, sir. it
items
is.
on our, okay, thank you.
And that was for $559,675 for CGC and $40,000 for Locklear and Associates for the CEI.
How far are they running that pipe?
It goes down from the lake, the outfall of the lake down, I don't know exact footage, but it goes over the crest of the hill so that, and down the hill until it gets to a point where it's below the level that the lake has to maintain.
Okay.
So it'll flow from there.
And what's the alternates?
The alternate was to
Paving.
do the paving.
Or to do the
was
paving?
The alternate 2,
Mhm.
and the other alternate was to finish, I might have these backwards now, the other alternate was to finish the pipe down to the creek, which the county will probably end up having to do that ourselves, but that'll be down the road. The main thing is getting that pond so it'll drain by itself so we can get our pump out of there. Right now, every time it rains, we have to put a pump in there to make sure it don't flood.
At the Council on Aging?
Yes, sir. That's the big lake right there in front of the council. on Aging.
Right, because that's where everything's draining to.
Everything in that whole area drains to that pond.
If you ride by there, there's a big double diaphragm pump that usually just sits there. Yeah.
I move we approve the project on Willis Hodges.
Second.
Have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6, approval of the grant acceptance for Justice Assistance Grant.
Thank you.
Mr. Blanchard.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good to see you again. This particular grant, we actually applied for it a while ago. The state was a little slow in pushing it back out to us, but the award is for $31,841. This is to supplement the crime scene investigator salary. This is just for the salary, not for the fringe benefits. And I'm asking for you to approve us to accept this grant to help offset the salary for this person, and the rest of the money will be coming out of our general fund. There is no match for this grant.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, moving to item number 7.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
While John is at the podium, we wanted to just give a really brief update of where we are on the school zone cameras, if that was okay.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so I've talked to the vendor, Ultimate, and they're waiting for some of the permitting to be completed. My understanding, talking to DOT and our permitting, planning, zoning here in the county, we should have that process completed in the next 15 days, barring anything. As far as requests for more information, I think we've passed all of that. So within the next 14 days, the permitting should be done. My understanding, within 30 days, and it should be fairly quick, the company should be ready to start installing the cameras. They're looking to, within the next week, to move the supplies to the sheriff's office and the basically in the security area we have for that to be monitored. And then once the equipment starts the process of being deployed out, we're going to start a warning process for the community. We'll come back with some more information. But again, the big campaign is to make sure people understand how and when these cameras are going to actually be active. And by that time, I should have a date on when they will actually go live. Again, there's going to be at least a 30-day warning period before any tickets are written.
Just be in the press, or you talking about
We're
social
gonna-
media?
I say we're going to blast it, so it's gonna be social media, it's going to be press, and we'll bring it back before you all as well. I should, within the probably the next, either the next council meeting or the one after that, be able to give you a date on, it looks like, when we're going to start the warning process, and we'll be able to put it out community-wide for everybody.
I think y'all will hear it. I mean, you can see right now in the news, Neptune Beach has been publicizing theirs for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And several more are coming online.
Okay.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Moving to item number 7, CDBG housing funds. Mr. Neighbors.
Good evening. I'd like to start off by congratulating you guys on securing the application for the CDBG. Just want to be here tonight to congratulate you, kind of ask any questions as far as moving forward and what's next and things of that nature. I've already spoken with staff. Your next item on moving forward is procuring an administrator for the project. So I believe staff is going to publicize in the MSA, local paper, your portal, or whatever you call it, for those services. And you should be getting your sub-grant agreement probably within, and talking with Florida Commerce, they say they're on track, but you know, I'm probably looking at about 4 weeks to get your sub-grant agreement, which lists details of everything that you're going to need to do prior to starting construction. Because if you remember correctly, that's one thing that we had discussed on the early on. There's going to be a lot of policies that need updated and things of that nature. So that'll all be listed in the sub-grant agreement as far as what needs to be covered prior to the start of construction. Working with staff, they know what their next step is in procuring an administrator. Once you procure administrator, get on board, whomever it is, that's when they'll start the process of getting your plans updated and discussions and things of that nature from that point. So, congratulations, and I'm here to answer any questions you guys have at this point on the CDBG.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, what was our award?
$750.
In my reading of this, and Sarah and I shared emails back and forth, the award said $750,000 for a minimum of 10 residences to either rehabilitate or new.
Correct.
How firm are we on 10 residences?
You have to go in with an idea. In a perfect world, we'd like to do 10. Whenever we go out for advertisement for homeowners, they start submitting applications. There's a ranking structure that's outlined in your HAP plan, and how you rank these individuals 1 through 10. Let's just say you get 15, 1 through 15, and we'll start right off the top. However far we can take the money, we'll take the money down to. Then once we can say, okay, we have monetary restrictions, we can't go no more than 6, 5, whatever the case may be. We'll then modify the grant, the sub-grant agreement, to 5 versus the 10 that we had originally stated.
Okay, so that's why I wanted to be very clear, because we're running right now our ship houses. The last commission meeting, we approved two. One was, I think, 140,000, one was 149,000.
Yeah, mine
So-
and
so-
County are running about anywhere between 118 to 130.
So with that level, there's no way we're gonna do 10 unless we strictly,
Absolutely.
unless we just look at doing some remodels and rehabilitations
Right.
and not new, and that's why I'm asking the question, because it said in there that, Nelson said a minimum of 10, and I just want to be sure that there's enough flexibility. If not, we've got to think very carefully how we move this program forward.
No, there's flexibility in there to where, you know, if you have the monetary constraints to the full 10, we go back in and we modify the sub-grant agreement and we go from there. And Florida Commerce knows this. They know what's happening. They know the increase in price. Of course, you know, they have a set way of putting their application in, and if we can't get to that 10 mark, well, we can't. But just do what we can do and then submit a modification to the agreement.
Any other questions or comments? My only comment I have is we appreciate you working with us to get this grant through.
Absolutely.
Really do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 8, special assessment fire rescue discussion, and that's Commissioner Mann.
I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. We've rehabbed the fire station at Kyler. We've got over $180,000 set aside for housing at the Kyler Fire Station. We have equipment available for that fire station. We don't have any staffing, and I'd like to find an avenue to staffing. I've talked with Ms. Little about what the requirements are, and I'll ask her to kind of outline those in a minute. I understand there's a couple of possible avenues to get the funding to do that. I'm not in favor of just committing to general funds for the fire department. I'm in favor of committing to the last person we need at Sanderson to have it fully staffed, and then the minimal staffing we can get to have coverage at Kyler. If it funds are for something other than that, I would be one of the first to vote to repeal it. But I feel like we need to move forward with getting staff in at Kyler. It's key to the county coverage. There's a big swath of the county in there that currently we have very poor coverage, to be honest. And we need to address that. Ms. Sarah, if you will speak to the requirements, and then we can get Chief
Yes, sir.
Nelson or Chief Blanchard to speak to the cost,
Yes, sir.
and just give us an idea of where we are and what we would need to do.
Yes, sir, certainly. So like Commissioner Mann spoke about, so he and I have had some conversations. He's had some conversations with the chiefs of the department, and we'll get into these in a little more detail later on. But in your packet, you've got, right now we're currently at $130 for the residential fire assessment fee. So at the top, you'll see the hypothetical situations. You've got $140, $145, and $150 a year. So like I said, we'll get down into that a little more, but that was just at Commissioner Mann's direction. Really wanted to talk about baby steps. That was one of the things that come up in conversation quite frequently, is how can we do this with the least impact to our residents. Do you have a question, Commissioner Mobley?
You say 130? I think it's 107, right? If I'm looking at it right. Currently, we're at 107.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
107. I'm talking a $30 increase. That's why I said that.
Gotcha.
We had originally talked about like a $30 increase.
The
so.
current rate is 107.
107.05. Yes,
Okay,
that is
yes.
correct. I'm sorry. Like I said, I've got that increase on my brain.
No, you're good. Making sure we're on the same page.
Yes. So what the law requires basically to do any kind of increase is exactly what we did before. So a methodology has to be determined, and because our methodology is older than 5 years, and really we have come to the end of that life cycle. So when we hired the company before, we came up with a plan to increase the rates over a certain period of time. Through a certain amount of information, data that was collected, and a methodology that was created. So we are at the end of that. So we could not just simply go back to our resolution now and say, okay, we're at 107.05, let's just go up $10. That methodology has to be recreated. So granted, we would not have to go through such great lengths as we did in the original implementation of that increase. So a lot of that work does not have to be redone, but it would require the county to seek a consultant to do that. Really, Bryant Miller Olive is about the one and only in the country that does that. Not saying that there's not others, but that is the firm that did our assessment methodology study for us before. So that would be our next steps. If the board decides that this is something that they would like to look at, we would need to engage for some pricing on what that methodology preparation would look like. Right now we don't know what that cost would even be to prepare that methodology. So if that is the pleasure of the board, we would reach out to some firms and get prices to look at what that would look like for sure.
And there's a firm in Tampa that
Mhm.
Putnam County's using, I think it's Benesh.
Mm-hmm.
And with BMO, we're not asking them to redo everything, we just want to update the methodology.
Right. So like I said, that's your initial next step would be that direction for methodology from staff.
And the timetable to make those things work.
We have 1 year to do that methodology preparation from when your increase would need to take effect. So that is something that, if you engaged with Bryant Miller Olive, say, in August of this year, just using a date in the future, you would have to have your methodology prepared and your increase approved by the board within a year of that data being complete.
From the date of
For
the
the-
quote being signed.
From the date of the
the-
contract being signed for the
So
methodology
the
preparation.
statute changed last year.
Yeah.
And there were concerns that local governments were using
Like outdated.
old data
Yeah.
to develop their methodology. So the
Mhm.
statute now says, essentially from the point where you sign a contract, to the point where you have to actually pass the final ordinance that will put a resolution to impose the rate,
Mhm.
has to be within a year. So what is changing process-wise now is usually is local governments, as our county manager reaches out to the consultant, we're asking them for a list of what do you need. So we don't sign a contract with them, hypothetically, and then spend 2 to 4 months trying to collect what they need to do the methodology. We're asking them for a list now so we can compile it all together and then engage them so that they have time to conduct their analysis within a 12-month window.
Let me kind of add on if I may. The question is, we know it takes at maximum, they've got 1 year to have that information done. The question should be, how quick could they do it? What is a realistic time frame? So when we're asking for all the information about what all are you going to need, we should also be asking, how long will it take you once this is supplied to the time that you're going to have this done?
Correct.
So that, because
Right.
So let me say, that once they do their initial efforts, if we go through and do the study and they provide the information and their findings from their study, what are then the steps that has to be taken at the county commission?
So if I can answer your first one. So my other clients are seeing right now a 6 to 9 month window on the analysis, depending on whether or not they need to conduct some of their own research to develop the methodology. After that point, there are a series of statutorily prescribed public hearings where the public comes in, they can argue, like for the fire assessment. You saw a lot of discussion about vacant land versus residential versus commercial. With those public hearings, usually Stantec, who was our consultant last time, provided you different options about how you can weight the methodology. So your public hearings, then you get more input, and then you move to a final adoption process. In that final adoption process, you also have public hearings, just like we do for our public hearings this afternoon.
And that must all be completed by,
1 year.
12
From
months.
no, no,
contract.
Start from
I understand, but in order for us to enact it, it must be completed by what time of the year in order for it to go into effect?
Oh, when the property appraiser would need to be notified is what you're
Which
asking.
is-
It's June.
So it'd have to be completed by June for it to go into effect when?
That tax year. So it would be on the tax roll for that.
the next
current year.
tax year. So
Yeah.
what we're working on now, our chance of getting it done in the next 5 months is pretty much impossible.
Right.
So what you're looking at is you're looking at something that would go into implementation the following tax year.
Which is what date? I'm trying to make sure, because we deal with fiscal years, when your calendar year is something else, and then now we got a tax year, so I'm trying to understand, it's got to be done in order for it to go into effect July 1. We can't do all of this in 5 months. I'm hearing that.
Right.
Okay?
your fiscal year is the same for assessments is the same as your calendar year because you pay taxes on your property for January to December. Even though we operate off of a different fiscal year's calendar.
So if we did it right now, it wouldn't, and just say it passed, it wouldn't be to 1/1/27?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And if we don't start it now, we got a very small window here, or we won't make it in time to get there. So that's my contention, is we need to start moving forward.
Right.
Chief?
And we can see the price of the study and then say maybe not. I mean, this right here is
Certainly.
just,
Yeah, this is
this is just reaching out to see if we can get the ball rolling.
Certainly. The study price may come back and you all look at it and go, oh, we're not doing that. Let's
Right.
wait longer.
Sure.
Certainly. Right.
And then
Yeah.
That has
even when we
happened,
do
so-
the study, if we do the study, it comes back and we're like, no, I mean, we still don't have to do it.
I'll use my work in Bradford County as an example. They went through the entire methodology process and their commission decided not to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Chief, I asked you to do some proposals and just outline the cost. And at that time, I asked for you to do the 140, 145, and 150 and look at what we would get at those evaluations.
Yep.
And I realized that the lead time between now and when we would get any funds from that is a year and a half. So I'm not sure that those evaluations will be exact what we want. But if you can speak to what kind of staffing that would do, or we could do at a cost, then we'll understand if we get a proposal, if we do the review to study, then what's the possibilities when we have the funding, or if we get the funding.
Yes, sir. If I may, I'm going to speak on the sheets here, the 140 to 155 that we talked about, just how we got there, and I'm going to have Chief Blanton come and talk about staffing. Every year, the property appraiser sends this document to Sarah, and this is how the tax roll is built for the fire assessment and the solid waste. And I use these actual figures here for the units of how many residences, how many mobile homes, how many people just have fire only, they don't pay any garbage assessment. Ag buildings, commercial square footage, and that's capped at 80,000 square foot for the large. We have 5 large that are capped at 80,000. And then the commercial with fire only, and then hunting camps. So all these have figures that are either $107.05, which is the fire for I would consider that a residential rate, or 22 cent for a non-residential rate. Okay, so that's what I'm basing my numbers off of. So if I took the 107.05 and extrapolated that to 140, and then right now the way the original methodology was at 72% of the residential paid for the fire assessment, and 28% of the non-residential paid for the fire assessment. That's how Bryant Miller Olive and Stantec, when they did the statistical analysis of Baker County based on the type of calls that we went on and where the calls were located, that's how they did the division of 72-28. So I try to kind of keep it in line with that. So at $140 a year, that's not a $140 increase. That's an increase of only $32.95 per year. Okay. To get an equal balance of that of commercial would be a 12-cent increase on the commercial side. So that would go from 22 cent to 34 cent. So at that $140 a year or 34 cent a square foot, based on all those predictions, that would bring in an additional revenue of $351,883.67. Now that's based on today's residences and today's commercial square footage. Obviously, every year this gets changed and increases as we build more homes. So there's more. That number is going to be more than that, but I wanted to use the conservative estimate. So if you go from 140 to 145,
which obviously you'd have to have an increase in the commercial number, which would be 35 cents instead of 34 cents. So that would be a $37.95 a year for residential, and then 13 cents for commercial. That extrapolates out to $396,707.83. Now I am figuring in all, if you look there at the bottom left, figuring all the current exemptions that are already in place. So I actually, did the math and made sure that we caught all the exceptions of the money that wouldn't come in based on how Mr. Sweat does the exemptions now. $150 a year and 36 cents a square foot would bring in an additional fire assessment revenue, $443,458.89. And then $155 a year and 37 cents per square foot for commercial would bring in $489,246.50.
Can you repeat that one again? Trevor, we didn't have that one in the packet.
Okay, 155 would be in 37 cents per square foot commercial, would bring in an additional $489,246.50 after exemptions. Okay?
Thank you.
So that's just the base comparison of numbers. I've actually got a chart here that I can pass out, and we can make some copies, and it shows you for each $5 increase per year, or for square footage, 1 cent increments for each one, what the revenue would be different. So, Kayla, will you make that for them, please?
Sure. Okay, I've got one.
Oh, he does.
I've got one. Sure.
Kayla, I think Dawn has one.
I'm going to ask Don to come up and speak
Got
to
copies, I think.
about the staffing needs for the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's that last page that he was talking about.
So it's different than what we had?
I feel like.
It's the
this
same
like-
thing.
is this-
That last page is what
Very
Chief
last
Nelson
page,
was wanting to
that's
make
right.
copies of for you guys, but it's in this packet.
Okay. The last two pages are different.
I feel like over the last couple of years, I've been up here 4 or 5 different times, whether it was to discuss insurance or ISO studies, which, by the way, I'll be back. We talked to them 2 weeks ago, and supposedly our numbers from that should be back sometime in mid-March. They give us a 6-month window. But we come up here a lot to talk to y'all about what our needs are and where we're going and what's going on in the county. It does my heart good, to be honest with you. The Commissioner Man has reached out to say, look, what's going on in the county? Where are y'all at? What are your needs and what's going on? Because it's hard talking about money. But I'll be honest with y'all, we're in a pickle. I ran the numbers for this last month of January. Y'all, we did 453 calls last month, burned 1,800 gallons of diesel fuel, ran out of trucks 15 times last month and twice today. 10%, that's 1 out of every 10 calls that we've got are north of Otis Yarborough Road. You wouldn't think those numbers are real, but that's where we are. And the station that's first due to that entire western section of the county, from Smoky Road, from the south end, all the way up to Kyler, is a station that runs a person short already out of the gate. That's just where we are. And I know these are hard conversations. And look, I read the paper, and I know that the city and the county is both trying to figure out what in the world they're fixing to do with developers that want to build all these neighborhoods, and that's a whole nother conversation. There's no time for here tonight about that. But we're just against the wall. Old Brian Stone and I over there at the fuel company have become close friends in the last few weeks. It seems like about every 5 days I'm calling him to bring another 500-gallon load to the station. But that's just the volumes we're going through. I know y'all don't like to hear that, but y'all have to, at some point, you gotta trust me. If I tell you there's a big pothole in the middle or a sinkhole in the middle of 6th Street, and y'all leave here tonight and go home and the road looks good to you, well then I've lost all credibility. Everything I'm telling y'all tonight, we've got the stats, we've got all the run numbers, the computer data, the fuel logs from LV hires, we can, whatever y'all wanna know, we've got it. And I'm just asking you to trust us that we are in a pickle. And every single day, we are running out of people. Twice this week, the city of Jacksonville has been in this county manning our fire stations. And at some point, they're gonna get tired of doing that. So I'm just asking you to take what Commissioner Mann has brought to y'all to the table. I went as far as to break it down, because nobody wants to talk about money. We've got proposals up here. He asked us, he said, look, run some numbers. What is 140, 50, somewhere in that range, what does that get you for your dollar? And at the end of the day, for $145 a year, which is an increase of about $3.25 or 35 cents, I have it on your thing there, that gets you that 4th person in Sanderson, and that gets you 2 people during the day, 8 to 5, 5 days a week. They go home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and they're not there on Saturday and Sunday at Kyler. Honestly, personally, if I'm gonna give you my heart versus what I'm supposed to be telling you as a person in the department, I don't know that I like that. Honestly, I would prefer to have somebody up there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's dual certified as a firefighter and a paramedic is what I would like to have up there. That's gonna cost you, if you live in a house in this county, it's gonna cost you $3.99 a month. That's what it's gonna cost to have that. Scares me to death to have somebody up there by themselves. But I couldn't imagine standing in front of y'all asking for 4 or 5 or 6 people a day up there. Y'all run me out of town. But at some point, something's got to happen that the people on that north end and that west end matter just as much as the ones that are in the middle of town. We've got to.
See, I'm gonna stop you right there.
Yes, sir.
Well, I have a problem when you say that.
Okay.
Because you make the commissioners look like we don't care about everybody but just in the city of McClenny and close to it. And that's a flat out lie. So next time you say that, I take it personal.
I'm sorry.
I care just about the people in Baxter as I do the people in McClenny or anywhere else that lives next door to me. So the next time you say that, I'm going to jump on it. Because I've listened to it several times and I have kept my calm and my cool. This time I'm not. So next time you say it, expect it.
I understand.
So when you telling me as a man that I don't care about the people in Taylor, I don't take it very lightly. Because I love everybody in Baker County just the same. Black, yellow, green, purple, it doesn't matter. Where they live, where they come from. And that's who I serve. So I don't appreciate that.
Fair enough.
So I don't want to hear it again.
Fair enough. Well,
I don't know how the other commissioners feel about it, but I don't want to hear it. Because we do. But you don't realize we have to budget every department in this community, not just the fire department. We pull $500,000 or a lot of money out of our budget every year to pay solid waste because our assessment's not high enough. But I don't see them up here telling us you need to raise your assessment because you don't care about the people in Sanderson. I don't want to hear it. And I'm sorry, because that ain't my personality or the way I am, but I don't want to hear it. So if you got a presentation, you make it. But don't say that this board doesn't care about anybody in Baker County. Did I make myself clear?
That's fair enough. Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. But those are the numbers, and that's our presentation.
I have a question, sir.
Congratulations on getting moved into the Sanderson Fire Station.
Amen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
It's an important move for the county.
I have a couple questions if I may. Do we have a number on what it actually takes to put the extra man in Sanderson and the two additional staffing people in Kyler? Do we have that number? Of course, what I see is we've picked an amount and figured out how much money it generates. This is kind of like the dog wagging the tail, all right? Or tail wagging the dog, whatever. We should be looking at what is it that we need?
Mhm.
Is it one person in Sanderson? Is it 2 people in Kyler? Or 4 people in Kyler? What is the numbers for that? And then let's figure out what the special assessment would need to be to accomplish that.
Yes, sir.
That's me, and what I see is we went to, automatically jumped to 140, 145. I get we had to just get an idea of what it would generate.
Right.
I appreciate that. But to me, we should be figuring out what is it that we need, and then what's the assessment that we would need to raise to meet that need, not this is how much it'll raise. So maybe I missed it, but I'm not sure how we ever started with the 140, 145, 150 numbers. And maybe it's just a starting point to generate some information.
We ran some numbers for up there.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
I've got the numbers for you, and I can walk through them.
I don't need a whole bunch of numbers. It's a really simple thing. Is it 3 people at this dollar or 5 people at this much? It's pretty simple. I'm not asking for a detailed, detailed analysis. What is the number that we would need? Because I haven't yet, I haven't clearly understood it, if it has been said.
It's going to take about $183,000 and some change to bring the people a year up to Sanderson to get that 4th person. That's what we're looking
So
at.
one person is going to be 183,000.
No, sir. No,
No,
sir.
Okay.
So that is,
To get
That's
that one
one-
position.
that is to
position.
take a part-time person who currently works on a day and put him from part-time to full-time 24-hour shift, and 2 more people, because there's 3 shifts.
In Sanderson.
Yes, sir. It's 1 person overall calendar-wise, but it's 3 people because they work 3 shifts.
One position.
So that's $183,000.
But number of people we are hiring, 2.5 people in Sanderson,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. $183,000.
And that's in Sanderson alone.
Yes, sir.
But the staff at Kyler, what is that going to take?
Depending on which version you look at, whether it's a couple of part-time people during the week, or whether you look at a full-time person 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're looking at somewhere between $191,000 to do 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday for 2 people part-time, or you're looking at 300, I think it's $326,000.
So the 140 doesn't even get you there.
No, sir, we will not get you
Because
there.
140 only generates
Yes, sir.
365.
Well, that's
We would
my
need
point.
fire
now.
We need
That's my
fire
point
now.
with, we started off with a 140, but it's not going to get us there. So if we're not even going to, if that's not even going to get us there, we need to know what is it going to take to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Your
And then
one
with
thing-
that number, then figure out if we can do the special
Right.
assessments or what it may be. That's what I'm trying to understand is
Well,
what
we
is it going
tried
to generate?
to-
How
here's
much-
the thing, we know
Close.
money's tight.
And I'm not being critical. I'm
Sure,
just
no,
trying to
no.
understand where the numbers come from to start with. If it was just a starting point to try to see what it would be, that's fine. But for me, what are we trying to accomplish? If we're trying to accomplish get fully staffed in Sanderson and putting so many people at Kyler,
Yes, sir.
then whatever, that's what we got to get a number. We
Sure.
need to know what that is and then figure out what this assessment would have to be to get there. That's what I'm trying to understand.
So from what I understand right now, I think Commissioner Mann did the job of getting the ball rolling to see what we could generate with those dollar amounts. What we would need now, from my understanding with our attorney, is the assessment, the study done in order to figure out what we would need. So all of these numbers here, I mean, kind of give us a ballpark of what we could generate. But after the assessment would be done, then we would explain what we needed, correct, to the study.
Well,
And your
we could explain
155
what we
a
wanted.
year, based on the estimates that the chiefs have provided, the 155 a year would get you right there at it. Basically, you're at like, at what their recommendation would
That'd
be for the
2.5 in Sanderson.
2.5 in Sanderson and
3 in,
3 in Tyler.
or one full-time.
Tyler's
Still be a
one
little
24-hour person.
Yeah. You-
Yes, sir.
Well, and that doesn't account for any growth. Either that is just based on today's numbers, and so any households that would be added or commercial space that would be added by the time
We
this
could
takes
talk
effect.
about the numbers all
Yeah.
day,
Mhm.
but we can't adjust any of these numbers without
No,
a
sir.
study.
No,
So
sir. Yeah.
I think the first step would be looking at the pricing of the study,
Mhm.
and just like Chairman said, you know, solid waste too. I mean, even if we looked at it
Mhm.
and the study price to see, you know, what would it cost us to get to where we need to be a baseline of it. Here's what we need to provide to the county. What's it going to cost us? And I think that's what the study should provide back to us, correct?
Well, I'm not sure that's what it provides. The study's going to provide you the basis for how you can charge assessments. Well, I can tell you, it is not going to be a drastic change from this. It may have some adjustments to this, but it's going to, I would fully expect, it's going to be pretty close to what we've got here. But we do have to.
The 107? Yes.
It's
To
the
the way
same
Trevor's
methodology
methodology
to get there.
is,
It's not going to be a massive change in philosophy
Mm-hmm.
or methodology to generate. It will give us updated numbers. Some of these numbers will change. We may change the percentage a little bit
Mm-hmm.
on how we get there, but conceptual wise, and you've got to base it on the latest data. So it'll change a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be a wholesale modification and change to this methodology. It'll be updated, but not a wholesale change. It's what I would expect.
What you're saying is right. When the people come in to do the methodology, they're going to look to you to determine what level of service do you wish to fund. The methodology is how you split it up, and how you split it up fairly. That's really what they're doing. And Mr. Chair, I'm not trying to interrupt this, but just a reminder, we've got the public hearing in 2 minutes.
So-
I'm fixing to stop it.
So I agree with what you're trying, but I'm just saying, at the end of the day, if there's a number we're trying to get to, number of positions, there's a dollar associated with it. Well, this methodology may adjust a little bit. It's not going to be a massive deviation from it. That's why I'm just trying to figure out how much is it going to be to meet that need.
Yeah, they'll need some direction from you all on
Right.
If
what
I
your
may.
dollars are looking for is, yeah.
If I may, I make a motion that we
Yes, no.
get a quote for the study.
I think we can just, we don't really need a motion, but we can do
You can direct county.
just
manager.
direct county manager. If
direct
that's
him.
what the board decides we want to move forward, just on getting a quote for
Yeah,
the
just
study,
strictly on getting a quote.
nothing else, then I'll support that.
I'd be okay with getting the quote, but
Okay.
that's as far as.
So you have the direction of the board.
Yes,
That
sir.
was
Thank y'all very much, but we got to go into, we're going to close our regular meeting. We got 1 minute. We're going to go into a public meeting.
Don, don't say we don't care.
We're back in our regular meeting, and we're going to go into our public workshop. We have several items tonight, and I think every one of them is just the final reading on those.
It is, it is.
So the decision will be made tonight.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Hope you're in the decision-making mood tonight.
Well,
We are.
I'm trying to get in a better.
Decisiveness.
Laura's good some of the time.
Yes, sir.
I mean, all the time, he's
All the
good.
time.
All the time. All
I'm
the
good
time.
sometimes, he's good all the time.
Yes, yes, sir.
I'll put it that way.
Okay, so we do have a couple applications tonight, and like you said, they are all second reading for requiring some action. If it's okay with you, the first two are companion applications, and we'll present those together. if
Yes,
that's
ma'am,
okay.
that'll be fine. We'll have to vote on them separate, but you
Yes,
can
sir.
put them together.
So the first thing we have this evening, it is for ordinance number 2024-24, a small-scale land use amendment. The request is for a change from agriculture B to very low-density residential with a companion application for ordinance 2024-25, a rezoning. The request is from agriculture 7.5 to residential, conventional, and mobile home 2.5. So this property is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Guy. It is located on Bob Burton Road. I think most of you are probably familiar with that area, but if you're not, it is the road that takes you from Otis Harbor to 125. Again, it has a current land use of Ag B, a current zoning of Ag 7.5. The parcel currently has 5 acres, so it is a parcel that was created prior to current standards and isn't currently in compliance. It is the wish of the applicants to bring their parcel into compliance for future use while still allowing the potential of a family lot for their son in the future. I know we talked a little bit 2 weeks ago about the reasoning for the 2.5 request instead of the Ag 5 request. And we're just seeing for a lot of financial institutions, they want that parent parcel to remain compliant with the zoning, even though by county standard it would be compliant if it gave away an acre and was only 4 acres. We would still look at it compliant because of the family lot process, but a lot of financial institutions are not. So just talking with people coming in, a lot of people are wanting to kind of be proactive with that so that they don't run into any issues in the future. So if you look, most of the property around it is Ag 7.5 with the Ag zone or land use of Ag B, but just to the south there is a small little section there that does have the RCMH 2.5 zoning with the very low density residential future land use. So with that, I don't feel like this is a stretch outside of the area. If you look around, most of the parcels are very similar to this one. Even though it has that Ag 7.5 zoning, they're not truly 7.5 acres. Whether that be from family lot or just older lots of record prior to current standard. So again, like I said, it's not currently compliant. Their goal is to bring it into compliance and have that flexibility. Staff recommends approval and LPA recommended approval as well.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a public comment. Does anyone in the public have any comment on the item ordinance 2024-24? If not, any comments or from the board, questions? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve ordinance 2024-24, read by title.
I have a motion, a second.
Ordinance 2024-24, an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Baker County, Florida, making a small-scale amendment to the Baker County Comprehensive Plan by reclassifying approximately 5 acres of real property owned by Robert and Margie Guy from agricultural B to very low-density residential, providing findings by the Board of County Commissioners, providing direction for reporting, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Close our regular public meeting on the regular meeting. I have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. We're back in our public meeting for ordinance 2024-25. Does anyone in the public have any comments on this ordinance? Hearing none, the board have any questions or comments? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve ordinance 2024-25, read by title.
Second.
Ordinance 2024-25, an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Baker County, Florida, amending the Baker County zoning map by reclassifying approximately 5 acres of real property owned by Robert and Marge Guy from agricultural 7.5 to residential, conventional, and mobile home 2.5, providing for a change of zoning, providing directions for recording, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Back in our regular meeting, have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll go back into our public hearing.
Alright, the next application we have is for ordinance number 2024-26. It's a rezoning. The request is from agriculture 7.5 to agriculture 5. This property is currently owned by the Donna Wheeler Revocable Trust and Miss Janice Wheeler Manning. She's the agent for the trust. She's the trustee, so she is actually the one that made application. This is actually 2 parcels that we're looking at. It is these 2 together, just the one is highlighted. It is located off of Lex Jones Road, which comes off of Cleet Harvey, off of 229. It is right before the pavement ends on Cleet Harvey. It's 29 acres total, land use of agriculture B, current zoning Ag 7.5. Miss Wheeler passed, and the property being in her trust, they are now working through the estate planning process, and it was clearly laid out in the trust that the property be divided between her children equally. With that, each child would get roughly 6 acres. In order to convey property by inheritance, the property must meet current zoning standards. So with each child looking to get 6 acres, that would not meet that Ag 7.5 zoning. So we have the request for Ag 5 in order to convey that property to the children without any issue. You'll see most of the property around this parcel has very similar zoning, Ag 7.5, very similar land use of Ag B. There is a spot just on one side that has some Ag 10 and Ag A. We do want to point out there is just one little tiny section where the flood zone touches the property, but it is just the tip of the property there. But we always like to point that out. Again, the property is currently in compliant. This is just to help with that estate planning process to make sure that they cover all their bases before they separate the property. Staff does recommend approval, and LPA recommended approval as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're talking on ordinance 2024-26. Anyone in the public have any comments? Does the board have any comments, questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
Move we approve 2024-26, read by title.
Second.
A motion, a second. Mr. Manda.
Yes, sir. Ordinance 2024-26 is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Baker County, Florida, amending the Baker County zoning map by reclassifying approximately 29 acres of real property owned by the Donna Lee Wheeler Revocable Living Trust from agriculture 7.5 to agricultural 5, providing for a change of zoning, providing direction for recording, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
I'm gonna close our public hearing, go back on a regular meeting, but I'm gonna wait for his vote. Just put him on the spot. Everybody look where he was.
Yeah. He wasn't thinking about that final vote when he stepped out. He's thinking he had a few minutes.
I know it. He's a newbie.
I think he was thinking.
Train it up.
Go.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was thinking. He was thinking.
You don't have to clap for him when he comes back.
We are still live, by the way.
Gonna embarrass him.
We get the officer to go tap on the door.
They're waiting on you for the final vote.
Doing your hair?
Yeah.
We got the final vote to
A
make.
lot of it.
I was sitting there like, man, I didn't vote on that.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
There we go.
Remember that vote.
That does us
Yeah,
for the
that's what I
public
said.
hearing.
He wasn't thinking
Thank
about
you,
the final
ma'am.
vote when he walked
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
That's all right.
My apologies.
It's okay. You're a newbie.
Eyes were floating over here.
That's what I said. They said no, I think he was thinking about
All
something
right,
else.
we're moving to item number 9, approval of the 2025 appropriation projects.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we discussed this at our county commission meeting 2 weeks ago. We talked about projects that we would consider for appropriations request, and those are back before you tonight for formal consideration. So the first project that is in your packet is the funding for the Senior Life Enrichment Center, what we're calling Senior Life Enrichment Center Phase 2 project. So Mr. Chris Lee just spoke earlier tonight on the shortfall for the paving of the entrance road into this facility, and that being an issue. There was a couple other ideas that come up through this that we could not fund with our current funding for the Senior Life Enrichment Center. And so in talking with Representative Brannon, this is one that he really wanted to see to fruition. It was really at his recommendation that we finish these few projects up. And so that was really what we focused on. The parking lot is obviously on the other side of the transportation center now, which is a good walk for anyone to be able to use that facility. There are a few spots immediately adjacent to the new building, but only for, I think there's 4 there now. So this funding would be for a lighted parking lot, an aluminum walkway system. The sidewalk in itself is already there that would connect the transportation facility to the new Senior Life Enrichment facility, but it is open to the weather. So staff are going to have to go back and forth between buildings. Clients will have to go back and forth between buildings potentially. And so just to making sure that they have a safe and secure walkway that's covered if they're out there in the rain and they've got the ability to go see someone in another building, and they're not just walking through inclement weather there. And paved road access. So you'll see from the first page, just to summarize this, the total request for this project is $500,000. That's what we estimate for completion on this, with us asking for $450,000 of that from the state and a $50,000 local match. Now, should this be awarded, that match money would have to come back for you all because obviously that's not in our budget now, but that could be added into the budget should this funding be received. Again, this is something that the state likes to see some type of match dollars go with this. And $50,000 is about the minimum that we've put in for these appropriations in prior years, and so that's where I programmed that in. If there's any issues with that, we can change it, but the total cost that we estimate is $500,000.
We could pull out 50 out of the road funds that we have.
Potentially, yes, sir. We could for
We have money set aside for that
yes,
type
sir.
of projects.
And we also talked about an in-kind match because we already are planning on doing some of the lime rock work ourselves. So what we're asking for here is just the asphalt to be able